When our MC Ryan finally finds the 12th floor's guardian, the rumors turn real. The human slayer exhales a wave of orc fear that drains his stats, but Ryan crushes it with blue earth breathing and keeps moving. This floor is a maze, so he picks the only rule that matters: mobility. He mounts a zombie wolf, darts around the beast, and lands a dirty strike from behind. It still isn't enough. Even his wound curse only pushes the orc into berserk rage. So Ryun switches plans. He floods the tunnel with expendable undead, soul-feeding them for a brief burst of power, then orders Kornak to take command. Poisoned deaths chip away at the berserk state, and Kornak draws a huge magic circle in midair, then drops a firebolt that finally brings the human slayer to its knees. Ryan finishes it with Hand of Death's life drain, levels up, and sees a new option: soul extraction with 57% success. He takes the gamble and wins, but the body doesn't disappear. If the Sermon family patrol finds that corpse, his hidden necromancer power won't stay a secret. So how did he end up in this place? The story starts with echoes of screams and pain emerging from a basement, and when the light pans into the basement, we see our MC, Rian Sarman, being tortured by a white-haired dude. The dude takes fun in inflicting pain on our MC, who is supposedly cursed. He has done a lot to hurt Rian that he expects him to die, but he is still holding on to life. In pain, Rian tries speaking out, but he can't because he is already missing his tongue. The white-haired man walks away in disappointment, saying he couldn't get anything useful out of Ryun, despite the fact that he was from the Sermon family. Apparently, the white-haired dude is named Sons Phaeton, and this is the 3rd year he has been tormenting Ryun after he wiped out the Sermon family. Talking about the Sermon family, they are a prestigious family guarding the front line against monsters that are known to constantly emerge from the Dark Zone and attempt to invade the continent of Drea. There are 5 great houses on the continent, but Sermon is the mightiest and most renowned house. However, the sudden disappearance of Ryun's father and his elder brothers has caused the house to decline at a terrifying speed. Seeing this chance, the Phaeton house made their move to crush the Sermon family. Apparently, they wanted the blessing passed down in the Sermon line, which is the blood of the dragon. Those who carry this blood become 7th Circle Archmages at the young age of 10 and Swordmasters at 15. However, Ryun wasn't among them because once in several centuries, a curse appears in the house. This is the curse of the Demon King Arkan, and it was passed down to Ryun. Because of this annoying curse, Ryun couldn't learn swordsmanship or magic. Ryun is devastated because he knows that Phaeton would never have dared to make a move against them if he had the strength he needed to defend the family. However, Ryun is tired of regretting everything that happened because he knows that the end is near for him. Just as predicted, wolves are set upon him, and as they devour him, Ryun closes his eyes with the relief that he can finally rest after several years of torture and inhumane experiments. As he fades into oblivion, he sees flashes of himself fighting on an unfamiliar front. He looks absolutely powerful while decimating enemies in trying to get to what appears to be a powerful being clad in gold. In the end, the gold grants Ryun one wish, and suddenly, Ryun opens his eyes to see his nanny, Cullen, out his name. Ryun is surprised and confused because he doesn't understand how the lady is standing right in front of him, since she is supposed to be dead. In addition to that, she looks very young, and the house also looks intact. Ryun immediately tells Cullen to bring him a mirror, and she does as told. After looking at his face, Ryun asks Cullen what year it is. Cullen then replies that it is the 17th of August, Drea calendar year 1892. This shocks Ryun because this was the same year that he was 12. This is also the same period that the family started going downhill. Ryun is still trying to understand what is happening when a stern-looking man enters the room. Ryun immediately recognizes him as Alejandro, captain of the Sermon Knights. Apparently, Alejandro came to check on Ryun because he believes that he is faking his sickness. However, after seeing Ryun in his current state, Alejandro decides to back off, telling Ryun that he is free to skip the day's training. He is about to leave when Ryun calls him back, refusing to skip the training, telling the man that he is fine. Alejandro and Cullen are shocked when they hear this because it is unlike Ryun to refuse a break. Alejandro is forced to ask Ryun if he is really the young master that they know, and Ryun confirms this, saying he hasn't changed. Surprisingly, Ryun tells Alejandro that they don't need to do any training because he wants them to skip directly to monster hunting. Deep down, Ryun has gotten the perfect chance to set everything right, and he is not about to throw it all away. After getting out of his bed, Ryun realizes that he can use the status window, which he considers a relief even after his regression. His current level is level 1, and his other stats are trash. He is also still under the Archon curse, which is rated very high. It turns out that the ability to use the status window is peculiar to Ryun only, as there is no other person on the continent who can use it. Moments later, Alejandro shows up to tell him that the monster is ready, and it turns out to be a dreadful goblin. The goblin has been tied to a post, and Ryun is supposed to take down the goblin with a wooden sword. Standing in front of the goblin, Colin urges Alejandro to stop Rian because he usually faints whenever he faces a goblin. Rian doesn't argue this because he knows that Colin is right, but this only applies to Rian of yesterday. Now that Rian is standing in front of the goblin, the curse kicks into action and it starts amplifying the fear of monsters to try to cripple Rian and stop him from making a move. Sensing that Rian might be hesitating, Alejandro tells Rian that he can rest for the day, but Rian refuses, and he manages to walk closer to the monster. Rian calms himself down, motivating himself with the fact that he is not the same Rian from the past. He pushes himself forward with the belief that he can take on the goblin. While staring into the goblin's eyes, he pictures the golden dude standing in front of him, and this fury pushes Rian to smack the goblin hard on the head. This shocks Alejandro and Colin, since this is the first time Rian has made a move. Rian then gets a notification on the status window, telling him that he overcame Arkan's curse through an experience that transcends the curse. Because of this, the rank of Arkan's curse has been downgraded, and Ryun apparently no longer feels fear toward monsters. The goblin is on its arse, begging for its life, and Ryun tells Alejandro to get him a real sword. Alejandro is shocked to hear this, but it dawns on him that Ryun has finally become a man. Armed with a real sword, Ryun goes after the goblin, and he cuts it down without mercy. Alejandro is left stunned when he sees this, and he tells Colin to watch closely because she is staring at the next head of house. After the training session, Rian washes off the blood on his face in the restroom. He is glad that he has confirmed that he can actually grow by overcoming Arkan's curse. Nonetheless, there was just a little growth, and he figures out that at this rate he's going to have to hunt down thousands of goblins just to level up. It dawns on Rian that he doesn't have time to laze around because the day when ruin will come upon the sermon house is at hand. Thankfully, he is glad that he can overcome the Arkan curse. Apparently, it has been 2 years already since his father and older brothers went missing, and they have just been trying to maintain their position as a great house ever since. Since the enemies haven't made a move yet, Ryun is relieved that he has found one way to level up. With this out of the way, Ryun decides to try out the potential second method. Not long after this, a redhead lady with a mask on her face shows up to check on Ryun. Apparently, this lady is the leader of House Sermon's Magic Corps, and her name is Sena. Just like Alejandro, she is also a 7th Circle Archmage, of which there are just a few on the continent. Sena is a mysterious woman whose background and true nature are unknown to anyone but the family head, Ryun's father. Sena then scolds Ryun, asking him if he is becoming arrogant because he took down just one weak goblin. Sena then reminds Ryun that the reason they didn't proceed with magic training is that Ryun has no talent for it. Without Sena telling him this, Ryun already knows. This is because Ryun lacks all talent thanks to Arkan's curse, stripping him of everything. Ryun then smiles because this all came to an end after yesterday. Since Sena is asking him if he has mana, Ryun tells her to test him. Sena then asks Ryun to close his eyes, and using her mana, she draws a picture in front of him, which can only be seen with mana. Sena tells Ryun to tell her what she's drawn, since he is claiming to be different. Without hesitation, Ryun tells Sena that what she drew is a beautiful red dragon. Sena is shocked because Ryun got everything right. She is even more surprised at this because she set up the mechanism to make it look like something other than a dragon. Sena starts pacing around the room, wondering how Ryun was able to break the family curse. While she is still racking her brain, Ryun calls her attention. He tells her that he can see mana, but he can't use the mana cultivation method passed down in the family, which is why he needs her help. Basically, mana can't be used unless it settles in, and mana cultivation is another essential method for leveling up. Apparently, what Ryun is asking Sena is for her to help him with his mana cultivation, which is essentially tearing into his body to guide the mana. Sena mentions that this is basically putting Ryun's life in her hands. Ryun then teases her, since he doesn't expect Sena to kill her. Basically, Ryun knows that Sena is the only person he can ask to do this for him. Even in his previous life, when the family was attacked, Sena made sure to stay with Ryun until the end, even though her mana was already depleted. Remembering this, Ryun stretches his hand towards Sena, telling her that he trusts her. Once they are in agreement, Ryun takes off his shirt and he kneels down in preparation for the method. Talking about the Blue Earth cultivation method, it is passed down only to the direct line of the family. Ryun managed to explain the whole process to Sena, but surprisingly, she is getting everything right. It turns out that Ryun trained with this method on the planet Adeon to raise his level and stats. As the process continues, Sena urges Ryun to concentrate, telling him that he might feel intense pain. Sena tells him not to make a sound or even complain about what he is about to face. Sena tells him to stop if the pain becomes unbearable, but Ryun screams at her, reminding her he trusts her. With this, Sena continues to amplify the mana cultivation method, but the curse kicks in, dispersing the trapped mana in Ryun's body. Sena is surprised at how crazy the curse works, but she continues to inject more mana into Ryun's body. Ryun groans in pain, but all of Sena's efforts keep going down the drain, as the curse disperses everything. Ryun soon figures out that Sena might not be able to overcome the highest grade curse. However, Ryun figures out that applying the training method from a Daeon will make the mana rebound. He decides to confine the range within his body the moment the mana disperses to deceive the curse, while the mana remains intact inside his body. Suddenly, Sena realizes that the mana she is sending in is no longer vanishing like before. Thanks to the training method, Ryun continues resisting the curse, and although the process is painful, Ryun doesn't mind. Ryun remembers that he has endured a lot of pain in the past, and this is nothing compared to that. He motivates himself with the fact that he is a Daeon's master player and his understanding of mana surpasses anyone else's. This type of understanding is something that is ingrained in the soul, not the body. Ryun continues to fight the curse because he is not ready to be defeated by a demon king that he hasn't even seen before. Ryun amplifies his receptivity and takes in every mana he can until he finally crashes to the ground. As he slowly loses consciousness, Ryun is not worried because the pain is nothing compared to the pain he felt from back then. He remembers that when he was in captivity back then, Alejandro had broken into the dungeon to save him. By the time he opened his eyes, he was already in the forest, and Alejandro was mortally wounded. Ryun is shocked to see Alejandro coming to save him, and Alejandro apologizes for coming late before he finally gives up the ghost. Ryun shed tears as he woke up to reality on his bed. Ryun wonders if the cultivation method actually worked. Even though he is supposed to be happy, remembering what happened in his past prevents him from doing this. Nonetheless, he is confident that he won't allow something like that to happen again because he now has the means to change his fate. However, he doesn't want this means to be discovered by other people, especially House Phaeton, since they are always monitoring everything he does. In addition, Ryun knows that he doesn't have what it takes to face Suns just yet. With this in mind, Ryun comes to the conclusion that his next plan is to accelerate the downfall of his family. Later on, Alejandro and Sena come to check on Ryun, and he tells the two that the whole process was a failure. Even though Ryun feels bad for the two because they came immediately they heard he recovered, he still can't tell them the truth. Even though he can tell them everything at the same time, he wonders if telling them the truth would actually help them. In addition, he doesn't even know if they are going to believe his story. With a smile on his face, Ryun casually tells the two that he can't feel any sense of mana inside him. He tells Sena that she is free to check if he doesn't believe him. Ryun stretches his hand to Sena, who agrees to check it. Sena tells Ryun that she doesn't know why he is denying his success, but she wants to confirm this herself. She activates the mana detection skill, and to her surprise, she can't find mana inside Ryun's body. She's confused by this because after the process yesterday, she sensed mana flowing inside Ryun's body. Totally disappointed, Sena walks away with tears in her eyes. After Sena's departure, Alejandro tells Ryun not to be too disappointed about the mana transfer failure because the monster hunt was a success and he can just focus on swordsmanship. Ryun then shocks Alejandro, telling him that he can't actually carry out the monster hunting a second time. Ryun tells Alejandro that after the first one, even eating became difficult for him. This leaves Alejandro totally disappointed and choked up. 2 months after this, Ryun didn't step out of his room. Colin got seriously worried because only the madam of the house is making moves to try to keep the family afloat. The other attendants and servants then ask Colin if Ryun has stepped out of his room, and she says no. One of the attendants expresses his disappointment that Ryun has remained in his room over the past couple of months. Another one believes that Ryun is about to die, which is why he has suddenly changed. Colin argues with them, telling them that they are wrong because Ryun tried so hard to meet everyone's expectations. Apparently, Ryun is called the ruin of the Sermon family, and he isn't called this in the estate alone. Even in the kingdom, people have gone further to call him the Sermon family's delinquent. It turns out that the number of employees quitting is now becoming higher every day. One of the attendants, talking to Colin, lets her know that he is also planning to leave when the month ends. Meanwhile, Ryun is in his room, and while having breakfast, he figures out that the quality of food is dropping, which means the family finances are going down the drain. Ryun is excited that everything is going according to plan. In the past, Ryun would have been running helter-skelter to try and revive what is left of the family. However, his current self is already experienced enough to know that he has to lie low to make the enemies drop their guard. Ryun is excited because the time to wipe out his enemies is close already. In the past, the downfall began with the disappearance of the family head. After this, the brothers and the mages went searching for him, but none returned. Thanks to this, the family lacks both manpower and resources to send more search parties. This has caused the once bustling training grounds inside the estate to be filled with a bunch of incompetent knights and unmotivated servants. In fact, the retainers of other nobles, who were always trying to get close to the next family head, saw the disaster that had befallen the family, and they all vanished without looking back. Because of this, things have gotten quiet, and Ryun sees this as an opportunity to lock himself in his room. Nonetheless, Ryun thinks the pace at which everything is collapsing is too slow. There is a saying that it takes 3 generations for a wealthy family to fall, but Ryun doesn't have that kind of time on his hands. Moments later, Cullen enters the room with a smile on her face to tell Ryun that it is time for training, and Alejandro is waiting for him. Ryun immediately slides under his duvet, telling Cullen that he also wants to rest for that day. However, Cullen isn't going to take no for an answer, and she grabs Ryun from under the duvet. Apparently, Cullen is doing all of these because she is determined not to leave the house in its time of need. Cullen then carries Ryun to the training ground where Alejandro is waiting for him. Moments later, Alejandro starts screaming, telling Ryun that he is holding the sword in the wrong way. Ryun cannot believe just how stubborn Alejandro is because he hasn't given up since. Even though Ryun wants to repay their loyalty and passion, he is not ready to tell them that he has been secretly training at night. In fact, he has been using the body control skill, which is a skill from Adion that was useful for assassination. This skill deceives others about the body's condition, and at the moment it is half activated. After swinging for a while, Ryun throws off the sword under the pretense that he has to use the bathroom. When Ryun gets to the bathroom, he figures out that the skill is still too unstable to use because if he moves too abruptly, the control is going to break. Ryun then checks out his status and realizes that he is currently on level 3, and there has been a bit of progress in his other stats too. Ryun figures out he is going to level up faster and more efficiently once his stats hit the 20s. Ryun plans to get a ghost job like a Dion and also raise the Necromancer and Assassin to higher tiers too. Just then, Ryun steps out of the bathroom to find Alejandro talking to the chief butler, Truno Hilda. Truno apologizes for interrupting his training session and mentions that he has something for him. He brings out a letter, and since this is not his first time, Ryun already knows what the letter is. Ryun opens the letter, which turns out to be an invitation to the birthday party of the Darren Kingdom's second prince, Kyle Darren. Apparently, this is the final puzzle piece of the Sermon family's downfall, and Ryun is excited for it. Soon afterward, Ryun and Truno depart on their journey to the capital. The moment they left the estate, Ryun fell asleep and only woke up hours later. He tells Truno that he slept late because Colin was busy trying to sort the clothes he was going to wear. In fact, it was difficult for him to stop Colin from following him. Basically, Sena and Alejandro are not coming with them either. Apparently, a massive monster horde had appeared which required their attention. Ryun cannot believe how perfect the timing is because Alejandro had no choice but to be dispatched to the border to handle the mission. On the other hand, Sena also left following a summons from Ryun's mother. Since his mother is the one acting as the head of the house, Sena had no choice but to honor it. Thanks to all of this, Ryun, a 12-year-old, is heading to the royal capital as the family's representative. Truno notices that Ryun is worried, and he tells him that there is nothing to fear because there is no one in the kingdom bold enough to lay a hand on the direct line of the Sermon family. Ryun cannot agree to this because he knows that this notion is only applicable to the Sermon of the past, but not the current Sermon house. Even in the past, sending a servant to the capital during a royal event would have been enough. However, now that the family has fallen, the family head has no choice but to personally attend the prince's birthday party. Nonetheless, Ryun is not worried, since he was the one who created the situation. Not long after this, they arrive at the capital of Darren Dearborn. Upon arriving at the estate, they are welcomed by Kyle and his servants. Truno and Ryun bow their heads to pay their respects to the prince. Truno talks about the prince's hospitality, but Ryun cannot believe his ears. This is because from the city gate to the royal castle, Ryun could feel the gazes of the citizens staring at the carriage. They are all worried that the sermon is already collapsing, and it appears that the rumors about Ryun are spreading quite well. This doesn't stop with the citizens because Ryun can even sense hidden ridicule and contempt from the nobles as well. However, Ryun is glad that everything is going according to plan. Since they all have a textbook about him being a failure, Ryun decides to play along. 5 days later, Ryun hasn't stepped out of his room and the servants are worried. They expected Ryun to be moving around and making friends with other nobles, but he is not doing any of this. The servants then send the youngest among them to Ryun's room, and surprisingly, Ryun tells the dude that he is going to attend the banquet that is being held that day. When the servants hear this, they all rejoice because their young master is finally leaving his shell. However, he wants them to keep the whole thing a secret till the event. Ryun knows that the servants would finally calm down after getting a chance to go to the banquet. Apparently, Ryun has been training for the past couple of days, and he is thankful that there have been no distractions whatsoever. At the same time, he is attending the banquet because he has a secret plan set in motion too, and this revolves around Sons Phaeton's attendance. That evening, Sons arrives at the hall, and he steps into the hall with his prideful self. Sons walks up to Truno to greet him, and Truno appears to be uncomfortable around the dude. Sons asks Truno where the famous Ryun is because he heard that they were the first to arrive for the party. Truno is pissed when he hears this, but he manages to keep his anger inside as he asks Sons what he means by famous. Sons then adds more fuel to the fire as he talks about the downfall of Sermon, which revolves around Ryun. Truno almost loses his mind when he hears this, but he knows that Sons is a 15-year-old magician who has already reached the 5th circle. Apparently, Suns is bold enough to do whatever he wants because he has the backing of his family, but Truno is pissed that Suns has the guts to insult the Sermon family in the banquet hall. Just then, Suns mentions that everything he just said is a rumor that he heard, and even he believes that the culprit spreading the rumor should be punished. However, Truno knows that he is just talking trash because Suns is known to be a trash who started taking alcohol when he was 7, and at the age of 12, he killed a commoner from the Phaeton's family territory. Truno is about to lash out when Rian's arrival at the hall is announced. Rian looks absolutely elegant as he steps into the room, and this shocks Truno, because he wasn't expecting Rian to leave his room. Rian's elegant appearance leaves the nobles gushing about him because he looks absolutely different from what the rumors said. The nobles start to change their perspective on the Sermon family and the fact that they are on the brink of collapse. Suns, on the other hand, is pissed that Rian's entering the room has taken away all the attention that he is supposed to get. Rian then walks up to Suns, telling him that he has heard a lot about him from his older brother, Ras. Apparently, Ras was the 4th son of the family who went missing after their father. Suns tries to steer the ship in his favor, but Ryun is not done talking. He tells Suns that Ras told him that he is a very kind person because they attended the same academy together. Ryun mentions that Suns' fame spread through the academy even though he left after a couple of months. Ryun then goes into full sarcastic mode as he tells Suns that he heard all about how he helped a student who was bullied and even helped resolve the suffering of a female student who was being harassed. At this point, Suns is already losing his mind, and Ryun takes it to the extreme, talking about Ras telling him something concerning a knee. Truno quickly cuts in, saying Ras claimed Suns brought him medicine when his knee was hurting. Truno then grabs Ryun, and he drags him away from there, saying there is something he wanted to pass on to him. As Ryun walks past Suns, he can see his facial expression and the fact that he is seriously mad. In truth, this is exactly what Ryun wants, because Suns' rage is very important to his plan. Suns returned to his room, all pissed off. He smashes the vase in his room as he remembers the interaction between him and Ryun. Apparently, Suns was expelled from the academy, and he knows that Ras knows everything about this. Suns is pissed and worried because he doesn't want the humiliation he suffered back then to come to life. While he was still in the academy, Suns had messed with a girl who was close to Ras, and Ras took it upon himself to deal with him. Suns' excuse was that he didn't know the girl was Ras's lover because he just assumed he was a mere commoner who managed to enter the academy. This only angers Ras further because he can't believe that Suns would treat a fellow student like trash, whether she is a commoner or a noble. In fact, he used magic to harm her, and Ras immediately tells Suns to get on his knees and beg for forgiveness. Ras lets him know that he is going to kill him if he doesn't sincerely ask for the lady's forgiveness. This was basically the origin of the whole knee story that Ryun was about to say in public, and Suns is going angrier by the minute in his room. Suns finally decides that it is time he carries out the plan he has been waiting for. He plans to crush Ryun as fast as he can. Suns is still raging about what he wants to do when he receives a visit from an unexpected visitor, Truno. After the party is over, Ryun and his escorts prepare to return to the family estate. Suns is glad that everything he planned during the party went exactly as he intended. He managed to drop the image of the venomous rumor monger of being an unfortunate young family head. He is glad that even Suns took the bait the way he wanted him to. Just then, Truno tells Ryun that he was impressed at Ryun's conduct during the party because it made him believe that the spark of hope within the Sermon family hasn't fully died out. Ryun then cuts in, reminding Truno that all he did was fail to build connections with other nobles, and he even caused conflict with the Phaeton family. Truno stutters as he tells Ryun that his behavior in Suns' presence was exhilarating. Ryun smiles when he hears this, and he immediately activates the carriage's soundproofing, shocking Truno. Ryun then tells Truno that if he actually believes that the spark of hope hasn't been completely extinguished, he would never have chosen to betray his family. Truno acts dumb when he hears this, asking Ryun what he means by this. Ryun lets Truno know that his crimes are unforgivable and serious too. However, he tells Truno that he can be forgiven because he committed the crime for the sake of the Sermon family. Realizing that Ryun has seen through him, Truno is forced to ask him how much he knows. Ryun then tells Truno that all he knows is that the situation is unavoidable, but he is going to give him a chance. Ryun tells Truno to listen to what he is about to say and let his judgment remain his own, as it has always been. Ryun then tells Truno everything that he has planned out, and after he is done, even Truno is shocked. He cannot believe that Ryun could come up with something so sinister. This forces him to start questioning who exactly Ryun is. At the same time, Truno shed tears of joy because Ryun far exceeded his expectations. Ryun then tells Truno that he already knows the choice he is going to make because Truno himself has stepped off the royal path. Truno stares at Ryun, wondering how he is able to smile when he knows what is coming. Suddenly it dawns on him that what he is staring at is not a smile, but a cruel and chilling murderous intent. Just then, the carriage stops, and the guard asks the driver why he stopped. He tells him to keep going, but suddenly, he notices that the carriage driver is dead. This is when it dawns on the guard that they have run into an ambush, and he screams at the others to protect the carriage. A bunch of arrows come flying towards the carriage, and the leader of the unit screams at the mages to set up a barrier. The barrier is able to protect the carriage, but some of the soldiers get impaled by the arrows. The soldiers are shocked that there is someone who would dare attack the Sermon family. They are still rallying around to try to protect the carriage when information reaches the squad leader that Ryun has vanished. It turns out that Truno was the one who kidnapped Ryun and got him away from the scene. While they are running, he keeps applying several status-affecting spells to try to keep Ryun down, but Ryun dispels everything. However, he maintains the lie that he is unconscious just to see how things will play out. Ryun knows that the guards would currently be going out of their minds because of his kidnapping. In his past life, he remembers that the guards poured all of their efforts into finding him, who is the last remaining direct heir aside from his younger sister. However, this caused the family's fortune to rapidly collapse, which eventually caused the Sermon family to completely fall apart. Although Ryun believes that with his current state, he can use the incident to move everything to the timing he wants, so he can serve his own purposes. Before Truno was kidnapped, Ryun had told him about his plan to make it seem like the family was falling apart. Ryun told Truno that trying to save the house in the current situation would make the other houses make a move to restrain them. Since the house is currently weak, they don't stand a united attack from the other families. Ryun reveals that this was why he intentionally spread rumors to show that the last remaining direct heir of the Sermon family is no threat to the other houses to make them lower their guard. However, even if the other families don't make a move, Ryun knows that House Phaeton would make a move to completely crush the Sermon family. Ryun already knows that the Phaeton house won't leave him alone until they snuff him out. Since Ryun already knows this, he tells Truno that he plans to use everything to his advantage. He tells Truno that he already provoked Suns, and if he is going to make a move, it is going to be exactly when he is on his way from the royal city. Ryun mentions that it would be nicer if there were an internal collaborator, and this is where Truno comes in. Ryun then asks Truno to make his choice whether he is going to make the incident the peak of the Sermon family's downfall, or the signal marking the start of the Sermon family's resurrection plan. Now that everything is going the way Ryun wants it to, Truno shed tears as he rides away with Ryun bound to the horse. However, Ryun tells him to follow the plan because this is the only way he can be forgiven. At the same time, Ryun is working on his stats, and moments later, all of his stats reach level 20, which is what he has been waiting for. Not long after, Truno meets with Suns and his knights at their desired location. Suns is surprised that Truno personally showed up to deliver Ryun. Apparently they have a deal, and Suns brings out a scroll containing the set of information that Truno wants. Suns assures Truno that the information was provided by a family named Asan, which means it is verified information. Suns mentions that Asan is a prestigious family in the Drea continent. It is a family renowned for assassinations and information trading. Because of this, Suns assures Truno that there is no way the family would sell fake information. Truno mentions that everything in the book contains the sightings of the missing heirs of the Sermon family. When Ryun hears this, he finally understands the reason why Truno betrayed the family. Truno's conviction was to sell off an incompetent heir, Ryun, so he could go after the missing older brothers who could properly lead the Sermon family. Ryun knows that there is no way Truno would have survived if Asan truly had the information. After Suns hands over the documents, he calls Truno a traitor and tells him that his work is done. Truno then tells Suns to keep his promise, and Suns assures him that the soldiers will not be harmed. Once the two parties are in agreement, Truno leaves with the information, and one of Suns' men asks him if they should take care of the soldiers, but Suns says no. He mentions that the Sermon family would have easily figured out that Truno is the culprit, and Suns wants Truno to return to the family for his plan to proceed the way he wants it. Meanwhile, Suns is exhilarated that he finally has Ryun in the palm of his hand. Moments later, Ryun opens his eyes in the basement with Suns staring down on him. Suns starts laughing like a maniac, making fun of Ryun for being in such a pitiful state. Ryun plays along, asking Suns what the meaning of what he is doing. Suns confidently replies that he just kidnapped the esteemed bloodling of the Sermon family. Ryun then asks Suns if he knows what is going to happen next, and Suns laughs at him because he believes Ryun is not in a position to make threats. Suns walks up to Ryun to grab his head and talk to him about what he might have heard from his brother, Ras. Suns soon gets into motion and he kicks Ryun in the head, telling him that he shouldn't have defied House Phaeton. Suns laughs at Ryun, telling him that Truno actually sold him out for a piece of information about his brothers. Suns lets Ryun know that there is no one who can save him. Suns reveals that kidnapping Ryun was the foundation of the war between the Sermon family and the Phaeton family. Just then, Ryun mocks him, calling him a chatterbird that just would not shut up. This pisses Suns off, and he angrily activates a magic circle aimed at Ryun. Surprisingly, this does nothing, but Suns is not worried because he believes that Ryun only managed to buy a few seconds for himself. Suns moves closer to Ryun, and Ryan tells him again that he talks too much. Suddenly, a magic circle hits Suns in the throat, ultimately preventing him from speaking. Suns grabs his throat in pain, and Ryun lets him know that he just used a silence magic circle on him, which has sealed his upper circle magic. Ryun laughs at Suns, asking him how he plans to cope as a mage who can't chant. Suns then decides to attack Ryun with a fire volt that doesn't require chanting. Apparently, he is choosing a low-level spell because he doesn't want to kill Ryun yet, since everything he is doing is under his father's orders. Suns hurls the magic attack at Ryun's leg, hoping to cripple him, but to his surprise, nothing happens to Ryun. Since the last spell he used is a second circle spell, Suns decides to use a third circle spell with the confidence that Ryun doesn't have what it takes to defend himself. Just as he is about to unleash his attack, Ryun hits him with a mana disruption spell, causing Suns pain in his hand. He screams out in agony, and Ryun reveals that the moment a preset level of magic is cast, he has what it takes to instantly nullify it. Ryun makes fun of Suns, telling him that no matter what he does, it is all going to be useless. Since he can't use magic, Suns whips out a dagger, but before he can even do anything with it, Ryun breaks off the chains holding him. Suns is shocked when he sees this, and Ryun lets him know that breaking the chains is nothing but child's play to him. Ryun then engages another magic spell, which is a paralyzing spell to knock Suns to the floor. Suns screams in pain, and Ryun tells him to look around because this time around, the roles are reversed. Later on, Suns wakes up to find himself restrained, and Ryun is holding his dagger in his hands. Suns calls Ryun trash, and it shocks him that he can finally speak. He starts wondering if the chains on him are not mana restraints, but regular chains. He believes that Ryun is foolish enough not to use mana restraints on him, and Suns quickly activates the Wind Cut spell. But this bounces back, causing him severe pain. Ryun mocks him, saying he probably believed he was dim. Suns is left wondering how he got hurt when there is no magic circle anywhere. Ryun then tells Suns that he is not foolish enough to bind a mage without any countermeasures. Ryun reveals that he has already drawn a magic circle all over his body, and Suns is shocked to hear this. Ryun then cuts his shirt to reveal the gruesome magic circle on his chest. Ryun knows Suns is pretty familiar with the forbidden art of carving circles into flesh with scars, which is called the blood circles effect. This was how Suns did it to him back then, and he even did it while he was wide awake. Suns has no choice but to ask Ryun how he knows the spell because even according to reports, Ryun shouldn't be able to use mana at all. Apparently, this is all thanks to Ryun's past memories in his life in Aeon. 3 months ago, after Ryun got the mana link method, the first thing he did was level the concealment skill that would help him stay hidden. It turns out that obtaining new skills wasn't an issue for Ryun, thanks to the secret of circuits that he learned in Aeon. Basically, every skill has its own circuit, and mana is injected into a player's unique circuit to activate the skill. It turns out that only those who have reached master level, like Ryun, can perceive circuits. Thanks to his memories, Ryun remembers every circuit of all the skills he acquired, which is why he doesn't need to study or train repeatedly to gain a skill. Basically, the only thing he needs is mana and qualification because the moment he has these, he can instantly obtain the skill. Thanks to the concealment skill, he slipped out to pre-install traps in the basement with the skills, so he can get ready for Suns. Ryun is glad that Suns walked into his trap so easily because the magic circle is there to amplify the pain that Suns meant for him. Moments later, Suns is already begging Ryun to stop poking him with the dagger. Ryun then suggests that they take a break, and Suns weakly thanks him for this. Just then, Suns' pride comes in again, telling Ryun to stop whatever he is doing to him because Phaeton men will show up very soon. Ryun then turns to him, telling him if he meant a week instead of a day. Suns is shocked when he hears this, and he starts asking Ryun how he knows this. Ryun mentions that Suns told his men to come back in a week because he wanted to enjoy torturing him for a whole week. Suns freaks out when he realizes that Ryun wasn't unconscious at all during the start of the whole thing. It turns out that Ryun also knows about the Phaeton's scary secret unit, the Fingers of House Phaeton. Ryun mentions that he is a direct subordinate of the scary unit. However, Suns still tries to save his own skin by saying he is telling the truth, but Ryun angrily punches him in the mouth. Ryun then leaves Suns, telling him to keep screaming out his lungs because he's not going to touch him again for the rest of the day, since he has not promised it already. Suns takes the opportunity to start screaming like a baby. It turns out that Ryun is already preparing himself for the coming of the scary unit, which will happen in a week. Because of how delicate the situation is, Ryun knows there is no room for any mistake. A week later, men dressed in terrifying outfits arrive on site. They are surprised that there has been no contact from Suns for a whole week after he kidnapped Ryun. The leader of the squad asks if there have been any movements in the area, and they let him know that they have been monitoring the situation in the area for the past week. The leader of the unit then says it is going to be a big issue if Sons had gotten carried away with the torture and ended up killing Rian by accident. Basically, the orders they got from the family head are to bring Rian back alive. Just then, the leader informs his comrades that he is entering the basement. He lets them know that the orders from the family head supersede any other thing, even if it is from Sons. The squad leader blasts open the door and informs his men that he will be going in alone because he doesn't want them to get in his way. As the squad leader descends into the basement, he senses something ominous, but there is no mana presence whatsoever. Suddenly, he realizes that he has stepped on a trap, and he immediately activates his barrier magic to protect himself. The dude immediately realizes that something bad must have happened to Sons. The dude then uses his magic to try to detect the traps in the area. To his surprise, there are a bunch of traps laid out on the walk path, which tells the squad leader that whoever the intruder is knows the layout of the facility. The squad leader starts wondering if this person is a third party or someone from the Sermon family. As he walks down the path, the squad leader increases the durability of his barrier while promising to make life difficult for whoever has chosen to pick a fight with the finger of the Phaeton family. Moments later, he arrives at the basement to find Sons totally bloodied, with his blood flowing all around the basement. He rushes towards Sons and he destroys the chain, restraining Sons. He grabs Sons and asks him what happened to him. Sons tries to speak, but he finds it hard to do so. The squad leader checks Sons' mana to confirm that he is the real Sons. Lying in another corner of the room is Ryun, who is restrained too. Sons then tells the squad leader to give him a recovery potion, but the dude suggests that they get out of the basement first. The squad leader mentions that the enemy hasn't shown themselves yet, which makes everything dangerous. In addition, the squad leader can see that there are a bunch of traps in the room. The squad leader wonders why the attacker overpowered Sons and didn't even bother to take Rian. He concludes that Rian is bait, but at the same time, he can't abandon his mission, so he decides to save Sons. While trying to get Sun out, Sun manages to use all of his strength to tell the squad leader that the attacker is Rian. The squad leader is shocked to hear this, and he decides that he is going to use a seventh circle, binding magic on Rian to make sure no one else, aside from him, can move Rian. He is in the middle of this when Rian suddenly appears behind him, telling him that he is too cautious. Startled, the squad leader cancels the binding spell and hurls a fireball in Ryun's direction. However, he doesn't get a hit from the attack, which tells him that it is just an illusion. To make it worse, he starts coughing up blood, which is a backlash from canceling the seventh circle incantation before it finished. Ryun's voice then appears again, telling the dude that he is going to recover from the backlash in no time, since he is a grand mage. Ryun tells him that he should have taken him out first the moment he entered the room, since he sensed that something was off. The squad leader is pissed that Ryun is playing a game of illusions with someone like him, who is a master of illusion magic. The squad leader then unleashes a powerful magic to disperse any form of illusion magic in the room. His magic works out pretty well, but before he knows it, Ryun is already leaping toward him with a dagger. The dude easily dodges Ryun's attack and berates him for being cocky. He then lands a counterattack that sends Ryun flying backwards, while confidently telling Ryun that he can't catch him off guard with his petty moves. The dude then decides to teach Ryun a lesson by melting half his face, while saying the head of the house would have no problem with that. At the same time, the dude believes that this is Ryun's last trick, because he would have used his ace instead of charging in like a dullard. The dude is still boasting about how powerful the Phaeton family is when he notices that the dagger on the floor is fading off, which is a sign of illusion. Before he can react to this, the dagger pierces his neck from behind, and when he looks back, he is shocked to see that Sons is the one holding the dagger. Sons tells the squad leader that he hates arrogance, and then asks the squad leader if he has heard of soul transfer. It turns out that Ryun is currently in Sons' body, while Sons is trapped in Ryun's unconscious body that is lying on the ground. Ryun mentions that he already figured out that the squad leader can't kill him because of the family head's orders. Ryun then mentions that part of the magic circles drawn on Sons' body is the soul transfer spell that sends one's soul into another and controls the body. Ryun then boldly tells the squad leader that this is the original ace up his sleeve. The dude gaggles on his blood and manages to unleash one massive fireball spell to try and catch Ryun off guard. However, he suffers the bulk of the attack, shattering his mask and killing him. Ryun remains safe in Sons' body, and he grabs the squad leader's recovery potion. He pours the potion on his body, and this hurts like hell, but Ryun doesn't mind because he needs the scars to be on Sons' body because of his future plans. Ryun then celebrates his win against a powerful 7th Circle Archmage. Suddenly, the status window tells him that his level has increased and that he has completed a quest. Ryun is surprised to see this because he knows about the increase in level, but the quest completion sounds strange to him. In addition, he is pleased that he went from level 2 to level 15, which is expected because he defeated an Archmage. He starts wondering if his level increased so much because of the quest, but he decides to ignore this because there is something he has to attend to first. Ryun then drags the squad leader's body and places the body on a table. it turns out that he still has uses for the body, and the success of this will determine how his future plans will be. Since circuits are engraved in the soul, not the body, Ryun is able to use his own mana even though he is currently in Sun's body. Ryun then starts pouring mana into the circuit, thus sacrificing 5 levels, and in no time he unlocks the hidden class called Shadow. This is a class under the Assassin category that can be obtained by reaching 20 agility points and 15 mana points. Ryun is glad that obtaining the skill worked out, but he believes that he can still get 2 more classes with the remaining level he has. Ryun gets down to business, and after pouring in enough mana, he unlocks the upper class of Necromancer Hand of Death. Ryan is relieved that this worked out too, and even though his original plan was only up to this point, defeating the squad leader made his level rise much higher than expected. He starts wondering if he can use the remaining levels to succeed at a 3rd class change so he can obtain the hidden class, Ghost. Apparently this was the class that helped him to rise to the top in Adeon because its synergy with Necromancer and Assassin are top-notch. Even though he is going to be pleased if he manages to acquire Ghost, the risk of failing is also very high. Nonetheless, Ryun is ready to take the risk because the reward is obviously high. Ryun then gets down to business, and he starts pouring in the mana again, reducing his levels in the process. It only gets worse as he gets a notification that his soul is wounded and needs rest. Ryun can feel the pain from this because his whole body appears to be shattering, and he starts wondering if attaining the upper class is impossible. Just as he is about to give up, he remembers all the painful things he went through in the past, like Senya and Alejandro dying to save his life. This causes him to remain steadfast, even though he is hurting, and he talks about how he is ready to offer up his soul if it means obtaining the upper class of Ghost. After some minutes of battling with it, a bright light emerges, and the system informs him that he possesses a soul of sufficient size. The system also tells him that the hidden class is opening. Ryun was expecting something else, but to his surprise he got something considered to be better, which is the upper class of Ghost called Phantom. Ryun is surprised because this is something he hasn't seen before. However, he believes that it is going to be similar to Ghost, since it is the upper class of Ghost itself. Now that he is done obtaining everything he wants, he figures out that it is time to carry out his original plan. Apparently, the original passive ability of Ghost is to strengthen the Necromancer's necromancy. It turns out that killing the 7th Circle Mage was also part of his plan. It is now left to pray for everything to work out the way he wants it because if it succeeds, his plan will be shortened. Just then, he activates the skill, Lich Creation, to try to get the Archmage under his command. Usually Lich Creation requires a Necromancer level of at least 70, but with a 7th Circle Mage as the material, Ryun is confident that it is going to work. Ryun then gets the notification that Lich Creation has failed, but a special undead creation is being activated. Ryun watches in shock as an undead creature rises in the shadows and asks Ryun what he would like to call it. Moments later, a loud explosion rocks the facility, shocking the unit outside. Just then, Ryun appears in Sun's body, carrying his body on his shoulder. Before the unit can start asking him any stupid questions, he tells them that what just happened is the squad leader's doing. Ryun continues playing with their intelligence as he mentions that someone in the family betrayed him, shocking the unit. Ryun says the proof of this is the scars on his body. He then tells them that he has bound the squad leader with an artifact, but it is not going to hold for long. He tells the unit that he is leaving the area with the unconscious Ryun, so he wants them to buy him some time to return to the family's estate. He assures them that reinforcements will be sent immediately, and he urges them to keep the squad leader restrained until then, because there is going to be a great reward for everyone. With this, Ryun rides away, and this is the last they see of Suns after that. The unit then gives another 7th Circle Mage of the Phaeton family, Pyrrhus, their report. When he hears the report, he is shocked that they didn't later find any trace of his colleague, the squad leader, also known as Ak, inside the facility. He then asks the dude who came to give him the report if they are the only ones who know what happened that night, and he says yes. This turns out to be a mistake on his path as another masked dude appears behind him and pierces his neck with his sword, brutally ending his life. Pyrrhus tells the masked dude that Suns' disappearance might be a big issue, but they are going to be in a bigger mess if it gets out that they are involved in Ryan's kidnapping. Suddenly, Pyrrhus hears a commotion outside, which turns out to be Alejandro. He is raging and talking about how he is going to kill everyone in the camp. Pyrrhus then steps out of his tent, demanding to know why Alejandro showed up at another family's territory without prior notice, when he knows that this can lead to a war between their houses. Alejandro lets Pyrrhus know that they are the ones who started the war first, and he demands that they produce Ryun at once. Alejandro mentions that everything is no longer a suspicion but a certainty, because a fire appeared in the border region just 1 week after Ryun's disappearance. Alejandro mentions that they just discovered the suspicious structure and underground facility, and the Phaeton family suddenly set up a camp right in front of them. Alejandro believes that with all of this, the Phaeton family is trying to hide something. Pyrrhus then tells Alejandro that they truly know nothing about Ryun's disappearance, and in addition to this, Pyrrhus reveals that Suns is also missing. Pyrrhus then tells Alejandro that they need their cooperation in the search, but Alejandro tells him to shut his mouth. Alejandro lets Pyrrhus know that they are not going to give them any chance to mess with the scene until the Sermon family is done with their own investigation. This immediately erupts into a tense moment between the two, and standing in the distance is Truno. He is surprised that Phaeton brought those troops over, and he starts praying that everything doesn't escalate into a conflict. Truno is talking about this when Sena appears on the scene, telling Truno that he has no right to run his mouth because he is a damn traitor. Sweat runs down Truno's face when he realizes that he has been found out, and Sena tells Truno that he would have been dead meat if not for Ryun's message. Sena tells Truno to keep his mouth shut and only talk when it concerns the search for Ryun. Truno then tells Sena that Ryun said he was going to leave a trace in the area, and he is pretty sure that the Phaeton family cannot locate it because only the Sermon family's peculiar cultivation method can locate it. Sena then decides to start looking for it, and she hopes that she catches a faint trace of Ryun's mana in the area, since he succeeded in the mana link last time. Moments later, Sena latches on to what Ryun has left for them, and to their greatest surprise, it is Suns who is hanging from a tree. On Suns' body is a writing pointing out that he is the kidnapper and that he should be punished. Below his legs is a letter left by Ryun, and Sena quickly grabs the letter. Apparently, Ryun left the letter there because he knew that only Sena would be able to find it. It turns out that Ryun actually had the idea of taking over Suns' body to destroy the Phaeton family from within, but since the head of the family is an 8-circle mage, Ryun believes that he might notice the soul transfer. In addition, if he returns to the Sermon family, the incident might spark a war between the two families, and the current Sermon family doesn't have what it takes to withstand a war. This leaves him with the third option, which is to completely disappear. However, he decides to leave an explanation for Sena before doing so. After Sena is done reading the letter, Truno asks her about the contents of the letter, but she ignores him and just burns the letter. Sena then tells Truno that it is time they return home because there is going to be a lot for them to do from that moment forward. Later on, a young boy named Ryun is seen running through the streets, and there is no doubt that Ryun is the same person as Ryun. Ryun runs into an old dude who tells him to head to the guild because the leader is looking for him there. 3 months after the whole issue, the scene shifts to Phaeton, the royal capital of the Phaenstroy kingdom. Apparently, the tension between Sermon and Phaeton has become a popular topic among the people. Apparently, the people believe that the genesis of the issue is that a traitor from House Phaeton kidnapped the last bloodline of House Sermon. However, House Sermon later accepted reparations from House Phaeton. Since Sermon couldn't find its kidnapped son or even the culprit, some believe they shouldn't have accepted the reparations. Somewhere in the corner is the Phaeton branch of the Assassination Guild, Martong, and 2 top members are seen discussing the whole issue between Sermon and Phaeton. One is the branch manager, Sapphire, who is a second-class assassin, and the other is a dude named Duns. From what they have heard, it is said that Truno was executed by Alejandro for cooperating with the traitor. Moments later, Ryun enters the room to see Sapphire. Sapphire takes Ryun to her office, where she shows him an official letter recommending him as a member of the Martong Guild. However, there is still one test that needs to be passed, and Sapphire lets him know that this is going to be his first real mission. At the same time, Sapphire doesn't even think Ryun needs to be tested again because he was able to reach the final test at the Phaeton branch of Martong in just 2 months. Sapphire is proud to say a great talent has been born in their midst. Ryun agrees to this, but lets Sapphire know that he is still a long way from being a second-class assassin like her. Sapphire smiles because of how modest Ryun sounds, which is quite different from how he sounded the first time they met 2 months ago. This is something that is not known to the public, but Ryun quietly showed up at the Assassin's Guild and suddenly pushed a sum of money to them for an assassination request. Ryun tells Sapphire that he has no issue doing this since he heard that the guild would carry out any request as long as money is involved. Sapphire then tells Ryun that it was not about the money, but she had the gut feeling that she might never meet such a unique client again. Sapphire has been inspired since the first day because Ryun brought a huge amount of money just to order an assassination on himself. After they are done with their boring talks, Ryun stands up to leave and he tells Sapphire to call him when it is time for the test. After Ryun is gone, a strange dude clad in a purple aura emerges in the corner, asking Sapphire if she accepted Ryun into the guild because of her feelings, but Sapphire tells the dude that it is more than that. She mentions that Ryun actually joined Martong and finished all the assassination training in just 1 month. The reason why this is unique is that the same training is supposed to take a minimum of 5 to 10 years, which makes him a great talent. Sapphire then asks the dude, Cal, if he has finished his investigation. Cal mentions that he has looked into the name Ryun, and everything he found was that he was found on the street and raised by an unknown master. However, his master disappeared, which is why he joined the guild to find information about his master. However, the notable thing is his assassination request on himself to prove his worthiness to join the guild. Sapphire says she is doubtful of the information provided, but Cal lets her know that it is all true because he already went to the place where Rian said he lived with his master, and there were traces of someone living there until recently. Even though Cal has conducted all of his investigation, Sapphire has the feeling that Ryan is actually Rayun Sermin, the missing heir of House Sermin. Sapphire doesn't want to think that it is a coincidence that Ryan went missing, and the same boy of his age, Ryan, showed up right around the time. Cal then tells Sapphire that the possibility of Ryan being Rian is actually low, and Sapphire asks him why. Cal mentions that everybody knows that Rian lacks mana and the skills to be a swordsman, and this is the result of the observation they have had of him since he was born. Because of this, Cal believes that there is no way the talentless Rayun possesses the same talent as Ryan. Cal lets Sapphire know that he can continue the investigation if she likes, but Sapphire tells him that it is enough. However, she wants Cal to look into Ryan's supposed master, because if he was able to raise a talent like Ryan, it means he is an extraordinary fellow. Unknown to the two, Ryun is actually listening to their conversation thanks to the necromancy skills. Ryun is also glad that the levels he lost during the class change have returned, which means investing his mana into body control was worth it. Thanks to this, he can change his appearance and even avoid mana detection. Ryun is impressed with himself because he now has the skills that he can employ to deceive a second-class assassin's detection skills. In addition to that, Ryun remembers the special undead that he created, and he ends up giving him the name Kornak. When Ryun first unveiled Kornak, he was shocked to find out that it was actually an undead that was capable of growing just like a player. Since there was no description, Ryun had taken a look at Kornak's circuit, which then gave rise to a quest called Avenger. Ryun was shocked when he saw this because he didn't expect a quest to exist on the planet. In addition, the whole quest is hidden in Kornak's circuit. At that point, Ryun sees Kornak as a mana-consuming monster and a burden that he has to share his experience points with, but he was sure that a day would come when Kornak would genuinely be helpful to him. Later on, Duns meets Ryun on the testing grounds, and he notices that he is carried away. He asks him what he is thinking about, and Ryun lies that he is thinking about becoming an official member of the guild and one day becoming the branch manager of Martong. Dun smiles when he hears this, and he lets Ryun know that with his rate of growth, he might actually be able to achieve this. However, Ryun would be going up against two other candidates, Pala and Lin, and only one will pass the test. Duns lets them know that this is the final test to become an official member of Martong and a 5th-grade assassin. Duns informs the trio that whoever assassinates the target gets to become an official guild member, signaling the start of a race. Before they go on the test, Duns suggests that they tell him the target's information first. The trainee mentions that the target's name is Alec and he is aged 47. Apparently, he's a merchant who runs a fairly decent shop, and he's always escorted by 3 mercenaries. 2 out of the 3 are bronze ranked, while the last is a silver ranked mage. It turns out that there's a rumor that Alec has recently taken a young concubine, whom he visits in her bedroom every night. And it is important to note that while he is with the concubine, the mercenaries do not go anywhere near him. Duns is impressed by everything he heard because all he told them was the client's name, but they conducted an extensive investigation on their own. However, he lets them know that there is no guarantee that Alec is going to visit his concubine that night, which is a good reason why the guild gathers its information well. Since Ryun hasn't shared an insight, Duns asks him if he is going to share the information he has gathered, and Ryun asks if it is compulsory that he does. His replies shock the other two, and Ryun mentions that they can't all become official guild members if they work together to complete the mission, which is why it is a test only one person can pass. Because of this, Ryun tells them that he doesn't see any reason to share information. Pala and Lin immediately criticize Ryun, reminding him that they are comrades. However, Ryun adds more salt to their injury, telling them that they didn't learn anything about being comrades during training. Duns then cuts in, saying Ryun is correct because this is a test, and it is good for them to utilize their individual abilities. Duns then adds that the most important thing is to utilize what they have learned in training. Deep down, Duns is impressed by Ryun's take because discarding or using others as needed is the way of assassins. After he is done talking to them, Duns tells the trio to go ahead and try to assassinate the target. Months ago, Duns was shocked when Sapphire told him and his unit that they had been given a task to terminate Ryun within 3 days. Apparently, the bonus for completing the mission is 100 gold, but failing it means Ryun would join the Martong Fainton branch as a special grade trainee. Duns laughed this off, telling Ryun to try for even 10 minutes. However, 3 days later, Duns and his men failed to catch Ryun because his traps and tricks frustrated the hell out of them. Because of this, Sapphire had no choice but to accept Ryun into the training program. It turns out that Sapphire intentionally picked the hardest target for this test to show the trainees that becoming a Martong assassin is not an easy task. Meanwhile, Pala has managed to break into the premises after disarming the alarm magic, but to his surprise, there are more mercenaries in the area. He soon finds himself getting chased down, while Lin manages to hide herself pretty well, thanks to Paula taking the bulk of the mercenaries with him. Apparently, every time an attempt has been made on Alec's life, the one place he always runs to is his main wife's bedroom. Inside the room, Alec and his wife are seen arguing about why assassins are after him. Alec manages to convince his wife that she has nothing to worry about because the room is safe, and there are two of his most trusted mercs outside. Lin has managed to get herself to the wife's room, and she is standing directly above Alec and his wife as they argue. Since there are just around 5 ordinary soldiers in the area, she starts wondering if a frontal assault is the way to go. Suddenly, she hears the argument intensify, and when she looks through the small hole in the ceiling, Lin sees the main wife holding a knife, talking about how she has been patient enough all this time. However, she mentions that she is tired of all of his BS because he has been taking money from his own family to fund the lifestyle of his concubine. Before Alec can react, his wife pushes the knife into his neck, letting out a pool of blood. Surprisingly, she starts shaking afterwards, asking herself what she just did. The guards outside hear her crying, and they ask what is wrong with her. On the other hand, Lin wonders if the request was a success or a failure, since the target was killed by his wife. At the same time, it dawns on her that Ryun has not shown up since everything started. Later on, Lin returns to Dun's, and Lin mentions that the request was a failure because Alok was killed by his wife. Lin is shocked to see that Ryun made it back before her, but at the same time she starts to wonder if Ryun even followed them to the mansion at all. Moments later, Paula also returned, but not without injuries. Paula mentions that he only managed to escape because the mercenaries just started fighting among themselves. Duns then tells the trio that the test is over, and for their information it is not a failure because Ryun completed the request. Paula and Lin are shocked when they hear this, since Alec was killed by his wife, which means the request was a failure. Duns then mentions that everything they saw was Ryun's doing because he made Alec's main wife take care of him herself. Paula and Lin hear this and are totally dumbfounded. Since they are all confused, Duns tells Ryun to explain the situation to them. Deep down, Lin doesn't think Ryun is going to answer because he would most likely answer with why he has to tell them. Surprisingly, Ryun lets them know that he is going to reveal everything. Ryun mentions that the whole solution was placed between Alec and his wife. Paula is shocked to hear this, and he asks Ryun if he got intel from the branch manager, which made him take advantage of the target's domestic situation. Ryun tells Paula that he learned about the target the same way he and Lin did. Ryun tells Paula that his intel on Alok bringing in a new mistress is correct, and the information on his guards is also correct. However, he lets them know that he already finished digging into these details himself. Ryun mentions that while the two are still trying to figure out a way to kill Alec, he was simply moving according to the plan he had already prepared. This shocks the two, and Paula challenges Ryun, asking him how he finished investigating Alec when he claims that he doesn't know who the target was. Ryun then replies that he didn't only investigate Alec. He confesses that he gathered information on everyone in the city with a bad reputation who could possibly become an assassination target. He even approached merchants sensitive to rumors to collect everything in advance. Ryun reveals that finishing the 2-month training in just 1 month gave him the time to prepare assassination plans for every imaginable target. Ryun reveals that he made sure he could respond immediately to whoever the target turned out to be. It then dawns on the two that Ryun basically studied the entire book beforehand. Ryun mentions that in the process of gathering information, he was able to find someone who held deep resentment toward Alec, and this is his wife, Kelly. Ryun approached Kelly, who was already mentally cornered because of everything her husband was doing. Ryun then proposed a solution for her, which is to hire the Assassination Guild. The moment Ryun mentioned this, even Duns is left dumbfounded. Ryun reveals that Alec had ignored his wife and kept bringing in mistresses. He was even doing all of this with money he received from her family, and this made Kelly hate him enough to want to kill him. At the same time, Kelly didn't want him to die, so Ryun told her that if she hired extra mercenaries and reinforced security, Alok would remain safe and only be frightened. Ryun then told her that whenever he came to her, she should frame the commotion as a scheme orchestrated by the mistress and a secret lover, so it would make Alec come back to his senses. Since she was always drunk on alcohol, she swallowed the story too easily. If things had only progressed to that point, everything would have turned out exactly as she wished. But right before the assassination began, Ryun told her one more thing. Ryun told her that the money Alec used to meet his mistress and buy her gifts was entirely taken from her family under the pretext of business funds. The moment they hear this, Duns and the others realize that from the very beginning, they were all playing to Ryun's tune. Duns then mentions that there is still something he cannot accept, which is that no matter how furious Kelly was, there was no way she would stab her husband to death. Ryun replies that he might have helped her a bit because he mixed an alchemy potion into the liquor delivered to Alec's home. To avoid casualties, Ryun also mixed some into the water that the mercenaries would drink. Paula asks him what kind of potion it was, and Ryun reveals that it is the kind that clouds judgment for a while and makes people easily enraged. This was when it dawned on Paula that the mercenaries fighting among themselves were also because of this. Ryan boastfully says he might not learn anything about being comrades, but at the same time, he didn't want fellow trainees or guild members to die. Lin and Paula's faces turn red when they hear this. Duns then mentions that everything played out the way Ryun wanted it, and he congratulates him on passing the exam, since an assassination doesn't require one holding the knife themselves. Ryun then mentions that the guild should be able to collect the commission fee plus extra from Kelly. Ryun reveals that Kelly might have turned into a murderer, but the fact remains that the assassins broke in. The guild is the only one aware that Kelly was the one who killed her husband, and to cover this up, Kelly would be ready to pay more. Dunes and the other two are left stunned when they hear this because Ryun is truly a scary mastermind. Paula concludes that settling for second place is the best because competing with Ryun is just a waste of time at this point. Duns then tells the other two to return to the guild while Ryun stays behind because he still has something to discuss with him. After the two are gone, Duns berates Ryun, telling him that he has just turned Kelly into a murderer who would have to keep on living with the guilt of killing her husband. Duns is pissed because the guild raises assassins, not monsters. Ryun then mentions that he initially viewed Kelly as a normal human until recently. Apparently, every mistress that Alec has brought in has been terminated by Kelly. Basically, Alec had other businesses like narcotics, gambling, and the like that have managed to ruin lives. It turns out that Kelly has been disposing of these mistresses using her family's influence, thus keeping her hands clean. Even though Alec was sick of her, he kept bringing in more mistresses, knowing fully well that they were going to be killed. Ryun mentions that Kelly's family forged their deaths as disappearances, so the victims' families are still searching for them. Ryun mentions that this was everything he uncovered, and even though it is just an exam, it was still an assassination request. Ryun says that whether she wanted her husband dead or not, the guild would only get full payment if Alec dies. Ryan confidently tells Duns that it is not an assassin's business to determine whether the target deserves death or not. Ryun asks Duns if they are supposed to stop killing for money and start examining motives instead. He reveals that Kelly never said she didn't want to kill her husband herself, but she intended to use the assassination request, and the guild simply completed it for her. Ryun lets Duns know that an assassin was involved in Alec's death, even though Kelly must now suffer forever knowing that she struck the final blow. Duns then asks Ryun if he is basically saying conscience has no place for assassins, and Ryun tells him that if he wants to keep his humanity, he must grow stronger. Ryun says he must grow strong enough to change the system from its roots. Before leaving, Ryun tells Duns that he can never search for conscience while he is still acting under the Assassination Guild. Soon afterward, a ceremony is held to award Ryun his title as a full-fledged member of Martong and a 5th-grade assassin. Once the award is given, Ryun receives the notification that the quest is complete and his level has increased. In addition, he has also been given a bonus quest, and Ryun lets out a smile. The system informs him that he has gained Lin and Paula's respect while he met Duns' expectations. Because of this, he is also given additional experience points. Sapphire lets him know that from that moment on, he can accept official Martong requests, and if he meets the conditions, he can also apply for a promotion. Just then, Ryun mentions that successfully completing a single request worth 30 gold or more is also a condition. Sapphire is surprised to hear this, but she has no choice but to admit that it is part of the conditions. Ryun then asks Sapphire how much they got for the Alec request, shocking everyone present in the room. Even Sapphire is shocked, but she has no choice but to answer that it was an advance of 10 gold, a completion payment of 10 gold, and the cover-up coin, which is 10 gold. At this point, everyone is already on their toes, waiting for what Ryun is about to say. Ryun then says that since he was the one who brought in the request, completed it, and even received additional payment, he has completed the first promotion condition of a single request worth over 30 gold. Sapphire is about to lose her mind, but Ryun is not going to stop, as he tells Sapphire that he is requesting a promotion to 4th-grade assassin. Sapphire angrily asks Ryun if he is not being too arrogant already. Sapphire says she acknowledges all the feats he has shown so far, but she believes he is already looking down on them. Sapphire mentions that all organizations have their rules and principles, and she lets Ryun know that the Assassin Guild is not exempt. She mentions that only 4th-grade assassins upwards are considered to be truly legitimate. She lets Ryun know that everyone builds up their skills, and they usually take pride when they finally rise to the rank of 4th-grade assassin. After saying all of these, Sapphire tells Ryun that he has disregarded everything she just mentioned. Sapphire admits that his promotion conditions might have been met even though it is not perfect. However, she lets him know that doing this will only earn him resentment from everyone. Sapphire then turns around to try to leave, saying she is just going to ignore what Ryun said, but Ryun calls her back, saying he has no intention of withdrawing his promotion application. Sapphire is about to lose her cool when Duns cuts in, asking her if he can say something since he is Ryun's test supervisor. Sapphire gives him the go-ahead, and he mentions that Rion is qualified to take the 4th grade promotion test as it is. Duns says it is not a matter of looking down on them, but rather because he showed something crucial during the test. Sapphire demands to know the crucial thing that Rion showed them, and Duns mentions that Rion was able to display pure physical capability. Duns says Rion fully utilized the abilities of an assassin. Lin and Paula are confused when they hear this because Rion basically succeeded in the assassination, mainly with clever tactics. Duns continues by reminding Sapphire that the 4th grade promotion exam is something impossible to pass without physical ability. Duns believes that they have gotten a chance to gauge what level of skill Rion possesses. In addition, Duns thinks this is an avenue for them to teach Rion a painful lesson. Everyone present in the room basically agrees to this because Rion mostly lost them during the tag game, using traps. After hearing everything Duns has to say, Sapphire has no choice but to grant the promotion test. She mentions that the test is something that even fully prepared assassins usually risk their lives for, and she asks Rion if he is prepared. Without hesitation, Rion tells the lady that he is up to the task. Later that night, Rion had dinner with Duns, Lin, and Paula. They ask him if he is prepared for the test, and Duns mentions that the test won't be held for at least another month or 2 because they need to provide a suitable target. Duns wants to know if Rion will be training in the time period, but Rion shocks them, revealing his plan to rest until the test. Rion adds that he plans to leave the territory since he is now a full member of the guild and he is allowed to leave for a while. Duns confirms this, and Rion reveals that he is going to be back before the test. Since there is nothing holding him back, Duns tells Rion to do as he pleases. Apparently, after this rest, there won't be much free time again because from 4th grade onward, one is required to always take on requests. Not long after this, Rion parks his things and heads out, and it appears that he is heading to the Dark Zone, known as the Hatland of Death. Later that night, an entourage runs into Rion, who is kneeling in the middle of the road. The captain of the guards, a red-headed dude, Kenil, screams at Rion, asking him what he is doing there. With tears in his eyes and a bandage around his ankle, Rion reveals that he sprained his ankle. He asks the group if they can take him to the village up ahead because he can barely walk. Rion acts pretty well, saying he might actually die if the sun catches him in such a bad place, which is why he sat where he hoped someone might actually pass. Kenil then tells Rion that he could have gotten himself killed because stopping a noble's carriage that is on an official duty actually warrants such punishment. Rion then tells Kenil that they don't appear to be on official duty because they are taking a covert route instead of the main path. Rion let out tears as he urged Kenil to save a poor young boy like himself. Just then, the noble inside the carriage tells Kenil to let Rion into the carriage, but Kenil refuses. The noble then suggests that Kenil put Rion on one of the horses, and even though he is against the idea, Kenil has no choice but to put Rion on his horse. As they continue on the journey, the other soldiers don't waste the opportunity to make fun of Kenil, telling him that the kid suits him pretty well. The soldiers then ask Rion for his name, and he introduces himself as Ryon from Fainton. Kenil lets Rion know that he is lucky to have met the kind, noble lady that they are escorting. Unknown to them, this is not luck but careful planning from Rion. The lady they are escorting is Saint Rose of the House Rose, who uses the rose emblem. While Rion was investigating the route for his journey, he realized that Rose and her entourage would be taking the same path as him. Apparently, they had been living quietly in a remote region of Fainstroy, but suddenly, the head of the family died, and Rose set out for asylum. Because they are a small border noble house, the soldiers escorting her are not even proper knights. They were basically House Rose private soldiers, and as they embarked on the asylum journey, they were appointed as knights. Moments later, Rion hears the soldiers talking about the downfall of the House Rose, and they believe that this was caused by House Sermon. Rion is surprised because, with all of his investigation, there is no indication that House Sermon was involved. Just then, Kenil asks the soldiers how they think House Sermon is at fault, and one of the soldiers reveals that he heard something. He mentions that House Sermon assassinated the head of the family to hide evidence of their collusion, and hearing this shocks Rion to his bones. Later on, they set up a camp to rest, and Rion sits away from the soldiers. He realizes that the soldiers believe that the downfall of House Rose is all thanks to the recent conflict between House Sermon and House Phaeton. Basically, House Sermon belongs to the Kingdom of Darren, and Phaeton belongs to the Kingdom of Fainstroy. The whole thing began when the eldest son of House Rose, who is practically from an enemy nation, became a knight of House Sermon. However, while performing border duties, he died at the hands of monsters, and House Sermon provided massive aid to House Rose in his honor. There was another house that was competing with them, and this is House Ani. They were completely dissatisfied with House Rose's rapid rise, which was backed by House Sermon. They began communicating with House Phaeton, who opposed House Sermon, and started moving to take advantage of the conflict between the two houses. This then led to the assassination of the head of house, and behind this conflict was that House Rose was secretly working for House Sermon, and that House Sermon assassinated the head of House Rose to hide the evidence. However, House Rose protested that their family member's death was actually an assassination commissioned by House Ani. But this was useless because House Phaeton already solidified the fact that Sermon committed this crime. Realizing that they stand no chance, since the head of the house has died, House Rose has no choice but to set out on the path of asylum to the Grand Duchy. Basically, the ones who know these facts are Kennel, who was just appointed as a knight and stayed by her side, and a few close associates within House Rose who abandoned Saintin Rose and left. Because the knights are not true knights, Ryun believes that the asylum journey is going to be a difficult one. At the same time, Kennel tells the soldiers the true story about everything, revealing that the person who is after Rose is the second son of the Ani family, and not the Sermon house. He adds that the asylum request was even made possible thanks to House Sermon that helped them secure the approval of the Kingdom of Darren. Kennel mentions that Sermon scraped together whatever it is they have left just to make sure they support House Rose. When the soldiers finally hear this, they raise a toast to House Sermon for being goated. One of the soldiers then offers Ryun a bowl of soup, and Ryun accepts the soup. They believe that Ryun is already tired of the story, but little do they know that he is deeply tied to House Sermon. Ryun then asks the soldiers if they are fine with him listening to their stories, and they let him know that there is no issue with this. However, they believe that the one suffering the most is Saintin Rose. Deep down, Ryun agrees with this because the soldiers haven't even understood how dreadful the situation is, and believes that this is because of their lack of experience. Ryun knows that the Ani family would definitely not be satisfied with just killing the head of the family. It turns out that the worst person in the Ani family is the second son, who is not even 20 yet, but has had 3 assassination requests rejected by the guild for being too messy. The dude is basically a vicious brat who likes to pick on the weak and poor. Ryun also heard that the dude doesn't joke with his own security, which makes it quite impossible for him to be assassinated. Since this is the type of person coming after Saintin Rose, Ryun doesn't think they have the time to be sitting around having a peaceful campout. Just then, Ryun notices that they are being watched, and he starts thinking of killing them. However, he bins this idea because the enemy would have already reported the route they are taking. He figures out that he would just dig traps to slow their pursuit. Later on, Ryun shows up looking all dirty, and when the soldiers ask him where he has been, he mentions that he slipped while he was relieving himself. Unknown to them, Ryun was out there digging traps for the enemy. Ryun believes that he has laid enough traps already for the enemy, and since he has gathered the information he wanted, he can freely go on his way once they get to the next village. The next morning, they arrive at where Ryun is going to head down his own path, and he thanks them for giving him a ride. Kennel then asks him why he is going to a village that is close to the Dark Zone. Ryun mentions that he works as a peddler, and he is planning to buy monster materials in the village and sell them in Phaeton. Just then, Kennel gives him a recovery potion, telling him that it is from Saintin. Kennel says Saintin believes that his injuries haven't healed yet and he is going to need the potion. In addition, Saintin said they were able to find a moment of peace thanks to Ryun. Ryun appreciates the gesture, and he thanks them for it. As they turn to leave, the soldiers use the opportunity to tease Kennel again, saying he is a good man because he would have helped Ryun even if Saintin didn't tell him to. Kennel is forced to scream at the soldiers to get a move on before they reveal all his secrets to Ryun. After they are gone, Ryun gulps up the recovery potion, and he hasn't even finished this when 6 dudes on horses appear on the scene. Without a doubt, he figures out that they are after Saintin. 2 of the pursuers are ordinary mercenaries, 2 sword beginners, and a mage. However, there is a last dude who has his face covered under a hood, but without a doubt, Ryun knows the person is a noble. Since the person is a noble, Ryun quickly figures out that the dude is Ani family's second son, Guruta Ani. As they ride past him, Ryun realizes that the pursuers are stronger than he expected, and it also appears that his traps were not able to hold them. Ryun is about to start complaining about doing too much work for a bowl of soup when he realizes that he was given a bottle of recovery potion that cost about 20 silver. Ryun knows fully well that House Rose stands no chance because they are going to kill the soldiers and then kidnap Saintin. However, Ryun finally decides to step in as he counts the potion as advance pay. Because he has to be quick and effective with his plan, Ryun decides to borrow Kornak's help, and he summons him to hand him his first job. Moments later, Kennel senses the danger behind them, and he tells his comrades that they need to move quickly. Kennel tells Saintin to hold on because the carriage might get shaky a bit. His comrades ask him why they are suddenly hurrying up, and he tells them that they are being pursued by people with mana. Kennel urges the team to get a move on because they are almost at the border of where they are going. Kennel tells 2 of the soldiers, Gain and Shaku, to take Saintin and run to the border just in case they catch up with them. He mentions that the Ani family would not be able to do anything again once they reach the border. It is pretty obvious that they won't want to clash with the Darren border guards. Kennel then turns around telling them that he is going to buy them some time. As they ride away, Kennel closes his eyes and heaves a sigh of relief because he knows what is about to come next. Even though he was just knighted by luck, Kennel is still willing to give his life for House Rose. Moments later, the pursuers run into Kennel and he demands that they stop right where they are. Kennel gets off his horse and he aura farms as he moves toward the pursuers, demanding that they withdraw immediately or die. Garuta laughs when he hears this, and he tells Kennel that being knighted doesn't mean anything. Garuta takes off his mask, and one of the soldiers asks Garuta if it is okay that they reveal themselves. Garuta then mentions that they are going to kill everyone except Saintin, so it doesn't really matter. Garuta sends the 2 sword beginners after Saintin, telling them to bring her to him before she gets to the border. Kennel prepares to stop the 2, but a magic blast flies toward him, forcing him to move out of the way. Kennel gets hit a bit, causing him to cough up blood. He realizes that there is a mage among the pursuers, and he looks pretty dangerous. Garuta then tells Kennel that he doesn't have to worry because a knight like himself will handle him. Just then, an experienced knight gets off his horse, and Kennel is shocked when he realizes that the person standing in front of him is Commander Siso, who was the commander of the Rose Knights. Kennel demands to know why he betrayed House Rose, and Garuta cuts in, saying it is all for the money. Since the Rose family is gone, Siso says there is no way he is starving to death. Garuta then goes after Kennel, swinging hard at him. Kennel is surprised to see this, asking Siso if he has no sense of knighthood. Siso replies that the world has changed and there are no morals anymore. Kennel stands no chance against Siso, and he soon gets disarmed. Siso urges Kennel to give up because he can actually serve better under a new master. However, Kennel rejects the offer, and this pisses Garuta off. He tells Siso to finish Kennel off so that they can continue the pursuit. Kennel gently goes on his knees, ready to be executed, and Siso lets him know that he is sorry for what he is about to do. Just as he is about to take Kennel's head off, Siso gets hit from behind with a magic blast. The group frantically turns around to see Cornac staring at them with a menacing expression. Siso is still running his mouth when Cornac sends off another wave of magic blasts at the whole group. However, the mage among them manages to block the attack, but he confesses that Cornac is quite strong. Siso, on the other hand, gets caught in the magic blast, ultimately dying. On the other hand, the 2 sword beginners have killed the other soldiers, leaving Chaku and Gaian alive. Chaku and Gaian don't want to give up even though they know their opponents are way above their league. The enemies then tell Chaku and his pal to leave because they are too weak and they are not worth wasting their time on them. Just then, Saintin steps out of the carriage to commend her loyal guards for holding out pretty well. Surprisingly, Saintin has a dagger in her hand, and she tells the sword beginners to let her guards go, or else she is going to kill herself. Saintin is pretty sure that their boss would not want that. Just then, the enemy soldier tells Saintin that she is misunderstanding the whole situation because she is not considered to be a noble, since she hasn't reached Darren. This basically means he has no reason to follow her words, and he can just do whatever he wants. Just then, one of them grabs Saintin, threatening to show her what happens to those who defy a knight who wields mana. Just as he is about to hurt Saintin, Ryun, with a hood covering his face, comes flying out of nowhere, and he kicks the dude in the face, sending him to the ground as blood spills out of his mouth. The other dude immediately gets into defensive mode, demanding to know who is defiant enough to attack them. Ryun stands over the dude he just kicked to the ground with his teeth all over the place, and he talks about how he has gotten interested in dealing with the bunch because of how lousy they are. Ryun then turns to Saintin, asking her if she is interested in hiring a Martong assassin. Hearing this shocks Saintin and even the enemy knight because they don't understand why a Martong assassin is in the area. The enemy knight demands to know why Ryun is helping House Rose, but Ryun ignores him. Saintin then makes her first offer, telling Ryun that she's going to give him 30 gold. Ryun is pleased that the lady got the idea pretty quickly, but at the same time, he lets Saintin know that her offer is too little. Ryun says 30 gold is barely enough for the knights in front of him, Siso, and Garuta. In fact, Ryun believes that the price is too low to handle even a third circle mage. Ryun then tells Saintin to quickly make her decision because if the contract is not made, he has no reason to be there. Saintin is no fool, and he knows that all their efforts will be useless if Ryun leaves. It then dawns on her that she has no time to think about consequences, and if it is to protect House Rose, she promises to give Ryan everything. She screams out, telling Ryun that she is going to give him everything he wants. Ryun is automatically drawn in by the offer and he accepts without further delay. Ryun then takes off his hood and the enemy soldier tells him that he is a fool to have revealed his identity when he is an assassin. Ryun then tells the dude that this is for cowards with small ambitions. Ryun leaps toward the dude and hurls his dagger at him. Failing to react to the high-speed dagger, the dude gets impaled and he crashes to the ground. Ryun then turns around with pride because his first official contract turns out to be the entire wealth of House Rose. Ryun stares at his hand in confidence, thinking about how to build a reputation worthy of this. Suddenly, the dude who got impaled with a knife stands back up, telling Rian that people like them don't go down easily. The use of the plural word immediately tells Rian that he is not alone. Before Rian knows it, the other enemy he knocked down earlier has gotten back on his feet, and he is coming straight for Rian's head. However, Rian dodges the strike thanks to his insane agility. The two then stand side by side, ready to kill Rian for accepting a contract from House Rose. The two talk about their insane and perfect swordsmanship, which they plan to use against Rian. They swing their swords at him, but Rian activates body domination and acceleration before going after the two. Their first attack misses, leaving them with an illusory presence. Realizing that they are swinging without hitting, one of them suggests that they take a step back and hit Rian with a counterattack. However, this is their mistake because Rian is already onto them. Apparently, Rian has already applied body weakness blackout and auditory impairment skills to dull their senses. By the time the two realize what is going on, they start to panic because it dawns on them that Rian has necromancer skills, too. With nothing to do, the two get their throats slit by Rian pretty easily. He kills them in the most awful way, while Saintin and her guards watch the whole thing unfold. Moments later, Kennel shows up on the scene, and he is glad that Saintin is safe. Saintin also weeps for joy when she realizes that Kennel returned to them safely. Chaku and Guyan are surprised to see Kenley hale and healthy, and they ask him if he was the one who stopped the pursuers. Kenley then reveals that he got help from a mage who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Kornak then shows up behind Kenley, holding Gurata hostage. Kenley reveals that Kornak took care of Siso and the mage, and even managed to capture Garuta. They are wondering what Kornak is when Ryun takes control of the situation and releases Garuta from Kornak's grasp. Kenley finally realizes that the kid standing beside them is Ryun, and Saintin reveals that he is an assassin from Martong. Kenley almost pisses his pants when he hears this, and he finally realizes how Ryun was able to take care of the enemy troops. The moment Garuta hears that Ryun is an assassin, he tries to take control of the situation, and he tells Ryun that he is going to give him 3 times whatever Saintin promised him. Garuta tells Ryun that it is all about gold since he is an assassin. This pisses Ryan off and he slices Garuta in half, telling him to keep his mouth shut. Ryan is pissed that the dude is treating him like some cheap assassin when he doesn't even know what Saintin promised him. Ryan walks up to Saintin, reminding her of what she promised him, because Martong doesn't sit by and watch when payment is withheld. Saintin stutters in fear before assuring Ryun that she hasn't forgotten their agreement. Ryun then tells Saintin that he actually has no intention of collecting his due at the moment since he knows what the house is currently facing. However, he tells Saintin to submit a formal request for the promised 30 gold to the guild. As for the other balance, he tells Saintin that it is going to be a verbal contract, which is going to be a contract between them. Saintin agrees to this, and Ryun tells Saintin and her entourage to continue on to their destination. He assures them that there will be no one else chasing them again. He also mentions that he is going to arrange for the guild to dispose of the bodies after they leave. He tells the group to tell the border guards that they were attacked by bandits just in case they ask them what happened. Ryun says the guards are going to understand once they hear this, and the knights are blown away by how competent and smooth Ryun is. Kennel is about to ask Ryun something when he vanishes from their sight. After he is gone, Kenley mentions that there is more to Ryun because he calls himself an assassin, but he summoned an extraordinary undead. Kenley says the whole thing is shocking, coupled with the fact that the undead spoke human language. Because of how powerful Kornak is, and given the fact that he is an undead under Ryun, it shows how insane Ryun's power is. Because of this, Kenley believes that Ryun is a disciple of the legendary necromancer named Veda. Saintin and the other two freak out when they hear this, showing how crazy his take is. They ask him if Ryun being able to command an undead capable of casting magic means is a necromancer like Veda. This is basically an undead that wields magic while simultaneously taking down a third circle mage and a sword beginner. Kenley then replies that it is not that there are no undead on the Drya continent, but its existence is on a different dimension entirely. Chaku then mentions that Ryun being Veda's disciple might bring a lot of repercussions. Just then, Saintin cuts in, telling the group that all of them must maintain absolute silence regarding the events of the day. She mentions that she is not talking about Garuta's death because she would even like it if the news of his demise spread far and wide. Saintin lets the team know that the person she is talking about is Ryun, who saved them because he is a compassionate assassin. Saintin tells her comrades that they must hide the fact that Ryun is Veda's disciple, given the fact that it is true. Kenley is shocked to hear this as it dawns on him that Saintin is different from who she was when she left the castle. Kennel can see that Saintin no longer bears the desolate eyes that she bore when she lost everything and set out on the road to exile. Saintin then asks Kennel if he can still move, and he says yes. She urges him to return to Fainton and place a formal assassination request with Martong. She wants them to commission the fee for Garuta's assassination just as Ryun told them to. However, Kenli is worried about leaving Saintin by herself, but she tells Kenli that she trusts Ryun's words that there will be no further attacks. Saintin suggests that they do their best with what they can achieve at that moment. She confidently talks about how they are going to secure a firm foothold within the Darren Kingdom so that House Rose can rise back to the top. Saintin even starts dancing, and she tells her comrades to make haste, while assuring them that she is going to assist in repairing the wagon. Meanwhile, Ryun is still watching them, and he is satisfied with what he saw. Deep down, Ryun knows that Saintin's dark side is about to emerge soon enough. It turns out that there was an event that caused warlocks to become taboo on the Drea continent until that point. In the past, this basically dyed the entire continent in darkness, and it was called the Black and White War. At that point in time, the warlocks suddenly rose up at the same time and began their uprising with the singular purpose to summon the Demon King. To do this, they started slaughtering people and summoned demons using this blood. They considered this minimal and proceeded to occupy the small southern kingdom of Lyco, and attempted to summon the demon world itself to that location. This caused war to break out, and their actions caused the entirety of Drea to be engulfed in the flames of war. The other races, including humanity, came together to stand against the demons and the warlocks. In the midst of this chaos was when Veda the Necromancer appeared. Even though necromancers were classified under the same school as warlocks, Veda was totally different. Veda treated those who were injured by black magic and restored the people. Veda also began to sweep away the warlocks on the battlefield, and because of this, he was considered a saint to most of the allies. Since Veda only turned those who had the will to serve even in death into undead, there is a rumor that their strength existed in a dimension different from ordinary undead. Thanks to Veda's exploits, the perception of necromancers changed, and the warlocks and the demons were defeated in the war. However, in the aftermath, Veda did not accept the rewards offered by numerous dynasties, and suddenly vanished just the same way he appeared. After hearing what Saintin said, Ryun realizes that showing the group Conrack was the right idea because knowing the legend of Veda left a good impression on them. In addition, Ryun is impressed by how Saintin managed the situation and didn't lose her cool, which shows that she has the qualities to lead a merchant group. Ryun then tells himself the truth that everything he is currently doing is for the future. Even though House Rose is currently insignificant, Ryun has confidence in Saintin, who is going to be the next head of the house. Soon afterward, Ryun arrives at his intended destination, which is the starting point of the Dark Zone, the 12th floor. Ryun then dives into the entrance to the dungeon, and after a while he realizes that he has gone so deep that the sun can't even reach him. Surprisingly, there is still light inside the dungeon, but the darkness is enough to devour the illumination. There is no doubt that scary things occasionally appear from within. However, humanity has made sure to defend the Drea continent without pause, and Saruman stood at the forefront of the defense, researching the Dark Zone. Because of how vast the dungeon is, it has the tendency to make people wander like a chaotic maze, which is why the Drea continent is considered to be its boundaries. It turns out that floors 1 through 6 have not been explored, but there are reports that they exist. On the other hand, floors 7 through 12 have been discovered and fully explored. The higher the floor number, the closer it is to the surface and the weaker the monsters become. For example, the 12th floor that he is currently standing on houses monsters like goblins, mutant beasts, and even orcs. Ryun is glad that he actually investigated the area when he was still with the Sermon family. Ryun discovered that it was the perfect place to level up, rather than hunting monsters scattered sparsely across the Drea continent. This is a location where the monsters are densely packed, and Ryun believes that it is more suitable for a player. Apparently, maps and compasses are useless in the Dark Zone because they don't work, meaning the only way to navigate through is mana. Basically, the difficulty of the 12th floor is roughly equivalent to a beginner's hunting zone. Visitors rarely show up thanks to the labyrinth structure, meaning running into others is unlikely. Thanks to this, Ryun is confident that he can freely experiment and unleash the power he hasn't been able to use until that moment, without holding anything back. Ryun is particularly interested in using the Necromancer power that he hid from the world. Without wasting time, he activates the power to raise the goblins he just defeated. Since the goblins are pretty weak, Ryun plans to use them as a meat shield. Engaging the Hand of Death skills, Ryun strengthens the undead goblins and unleashes them on the area. Ryun sits and watches as his goblins tear apart the other monsters because he knows that nothing really poses a threat to him on the 12th floor. Once the undead army reaches 30, they fall off and Ryun figures out that his current limit is 30. He is disappointed because, in his prime, he was able to command thousands of undead. He believes that the undead are like marionettes on strings and he must control them individually, while they constantly drain his mana. However, thanks to his experience, his mental fortitude is sufficient, but his lack of mana causes him a big issue. Even though he is in the Dark Zone to gain experience, he knows he has to address his mana deficiency. To do this, Ryun figures out that he has to take down the floor boss. After a while, Ryun figures out that he has taken down about 100 orcs and goblins, leaving him to admit that the monster density in the dungeon is quite high. He compares it to dozens of dungeons getting combined and vomiting out monsters endlessly. In addition, the monsters in the Dark Zone do not vanish upon death, but they revive after a set period. Among monsters of the Drea continent, there are some that have formed colonies or interact with humans, classifying them as other races, but the creatures in the dark are total monsters that think only of slaughter. Ryun then decides to ignore other distractions and just focus on improving his magic. He plans to upgrade his skills and Kornak too. Ryun sits down in a meditating position and starts leveling up. Shortly afterward, he figures out that he has done everything he can through leveling up, which means he must now grow through methods that are outside the system. Suddenly, he gets the notification that Kornak has just found a bone that he likes. It turns out to be a goblin shaman's finger bone, and thanks to this, his magic increased by 1. Ryun is shocked when he sees this because Kornak is basically a growing undead. It then dawns on him that it would be profitable for him to raise a single undead rather than maintain dozens of weak undead. However, he is not sure if he can truly work on Kornak, since it is a new type of undead that he hasn't seen before. Ryun then opens his storage space to bring out the corpses of Garuta knights that he stored inside. Ryun is glad that he actually brought them because he can use their souls as an experiment. Ryun begins the process of soul extraction and knows that if it succeeds, it is going to provide the power he needs to deal with the scary floor guardian. Apparently, the floor guardian of the 12th floor is a well-known entity because its stories have spread among those who have visited the floor. It turns out that the floor boss is a special orc, and the Sermon family calls it the Human Slayer. Ryun has always thought that this was an exaggeration, but standing in front of the beast in person has changed his perspective. Just then, the orc breathes down on him, and the system lets him know that he has been exposed to orc fear, resulting in a temporary loss of stats. However, Ryun resisted this with the blue earth breathing technique, and he lets the boss monster know that he has already prepared everything necessary to face it. Since the floor is designed like a maze, Ryun figures out that what is needed the most is mobility. Just then, Ryun mounts a zombie wolf, which he raised by killing the orc chieftain's mount. Even though the zombie wolf will disappear once the magic infusion ends, Ryun believes that it still provides enough time to deal with the Human Slayer. Using the zombie wolf, Ryun is able to get around the Human Slayer, and after assessing the situation, Ryun realizes that the monster is truly worthy of its name. The Human Slayer is so dangerous that even the Sermon family hunts by forming entire squads of knights and mages. Ryun notices that the beast is even more hyped thanks to the presence he spread around. However, Ryun believes that this only provides an opening for him. Suddenly, Ryun appears behind the beast and unleashes an attack on the monster. Even though Ryun put a lot of effort into it, he couldn't deal a fatal blow, and she believes that it was because his status as an assassin is too low. However, Ryun is not ready to give up, as he makes it worse by using the wound aggravation skill. This causes the orc to scream in pain as its back cracks in agony. Ryun expects the beast to just give up and die because the skill he used on it is a curse-type skill. Surprisingly, the orc turns to the berserk skill to block its pain and unleash more power. It then dawns on Ryun that defeating the orc physically will definitely not work. Ryun wastes no time raising the undead under his command. Ryun also whips out Garuta's dead comrades. Even though he failed in his last experiment, he believes that he has found another way to grow, which is undead enchantment. Ryun then consumes the souls of the dead knights to strengthen his undead army. Surprisingly, this works, and the system informs him that he can temporarily use the knight's abilities. Kornak is also able to consume a mage's soul, and Ryun is informed that Kornak's ability has been completely enhanced by soul sacrifice. In addition, Kornak was able to obtain some of the knowledge from his past life. With this, Ryun tells Kornak to take command of the army. The undead army immediately makes their way towards the Human Slayer as they deal several damage to its body. However, after a while, the Human Slayer still remains standing, even though he used the skill where the undead emit deadly poison when they die. Ryun then activates the Commander's Eye skill to see how much damage the undead did to the Human Slayer. Even though they managed to deal a ton of damage, the undead goblins have been wiped out, but Ryun is not disappointed by this since he already knows that they are expendable. However, the poison manages to weaken the orc's berserk state, and Ryun screams at Kornak to finish the job. Kornak then leaps into the air to unleash a powerful magic circle to unleash a devastating fire attack, which is large enough to consume the Human Slayer. With the firebolt about to come on, the Human Slayer screams in fear because it knows what is coming for it. The firebolt finally lands and destroys every cell in the orc's body, ultimately bringing it to its knees. As it takes its final breath, Ryun commends the orc because it truly lived up to its title as a Human Slayer. Ryun then unsummons the rest of his undead army, returning them to the storage space. Ryun notices that the orc is trying its best to stay alive. But Ryun is not about to allow this, and he engages the Hand of Death skill that he has been upgrading for the past few days. It turns out that there is a sub-skill close to the Hand of Death, and it is called Life Drain. Ryun uses the Life Drain on the orc, and he starts gaining some stat increases until he reaches his limit and can no longer take in any points. The system informs him that he is receiving special experience points for being the first to defeat the Human Slayer. Thanks to this, his level increased, and he is informed that the Phantom's traits enable the use of soul extraction on the Human Slayer, but the chance of success is 57%. Ryun is shocked to see this because he didn't know he could actually harvest the soul of a named boss monster, and this is because he assumed that the monsters inside the Dark Zones lacked souls. However, this tells him that the Floor Guardians might be an exception. Even though the chances of this coming through is 57%, Ryun is not ready to let it slip. Ryun then activates the soul extraction, unleashing a dark aura that infiltrates the orc's body. Surprisingly, the extraction is successful, but Ryun runs into an unexpected problem. Instead of the orc's body fading away, it remains intact even though Ryun already extracted the soul. This is a problem because it is supposed to fade away and then re-emerge later in preparation for the next challenger of the floor. He knows for a fact that the knights from the Sermon family will discover the orc the way it is once they come patrolling. Later on, knights from the family enter the floor, and, to their surprise, they find the leftovers of a terrifying battle. This immediately tells them that the report about the Human Slayer being hunted was actually true. They assume that those who fought the Human Slayer are experienced fighters accompanied by elite mages. At the same time, the knights believe that this is weird because they didn't get a report of a large group entering the Dark Zone. They are also blown away by the marks left on the ground because it shows signs of people experienced in fighting monsters. It soon dawns on them that the Human Slayer has been taken down, but they are scared that without the Floor Guardian, the monsters of the 12th floor will grow restless and try to break past their zones. The team leader then tells his comrades that they need to stop the monsters by all means. One of the knights then notices that his one-handed comrade, Zhang, is lost in his thoughts. He asks him what is wrong with him, but the dude replies that he is fine. He suggests that they finish their work so that they can quickly head back. Deep down, Zhang is hyped by what he is looking at because he figures out that it is a message from Ryun and the time to fulfill his task has arrived. On the other hand, Ryun makes it to the 11th floor, which is made of lakes and marshlands, totally different from the floor he just left. Moments later, he opens his storage space and he summons the Human Slayer. Even though the corpse of the orc should have disappeared, it remained in Ryun's possession for some weird reason. At the same time, something interesting has come up, which is a bunch of quests. He now has 4 quests, which are the Path of Revenge, the Path of the Assassin, the Path of the Necromancer, and the Path of the Soul. The first 2 quests appeared after he defeated Ake and arrived at Martong. However, the Path of the Necromancer and the Path of the Soul recently showed up after he took down the Human Slayer. Just as he is about to check the details, the 2 quests suddenly merge into one, turning into a main quest, Veda's Legacy. Ryun is shocked to see that the Path of the Assassin has been converted to a job quest, and the sub-quests for the Path of Revenge are open. For the Path of Revenge, he is expected to rebuild the Sermon family, and for the Path of the Assassin, he is to obtain a Class 4 Assassin qualification from Martong. Ryun is shocked to see that the system has evolved because it was practically useless in Drea, unlike in Adeon. Ryun starts wondering why the system had to evolve at that moment. For the Veda's Legacy quest, he is told to raise the Human Slayer as an undead. He wonders if this is a coincidence, or if there is some kind of connection between the Human Slayer and Veda. Since he is confused about everything happening, he figures out that completing the quest is the only way to truly understand what is happening. Ryun then kicks his mission into play, and he tries to raise the Human Slayer. A dark purple aura covers the entire room as Ryun expends more power, trying to pull the Human Slayer out of the abyss. Before he knows it, he realizes that his mana is being drained at an aggressive rate. By the time he loses his footing, the Human Slayer emerges, but it appears that it is missing some body parts. The Human Slayer walks over to Ryun and bows to him, and Ryun is informed that he has successfully completed Veda's Legacy to raise the Human Slayer. However, a new quest pops up, and this requires him to complete the Human Slayer. He is informed that to complete the Human Slayer, he is going to need a hero's soul. Ryun is disappointed that even after using all of his mana, the Human Slayer came out incomplete. Moments later, Ryun engages the Human Slayer in battle, and even though it is not complete yet, it is a complete menace as it tears down monsters. However, there is a downside to this. Since the Human Slayer is a special entity on its own, it can be stored in the corpse storage without being destroyed, but Ryun would have to constantly supply it with mana. With this, Ryun fears that raising other undead will be impossible, but he also believes that he has found a way to utilize the Human Slayer. He plans to use Kornak for long-range attacks while he uses the Human Slayer. which he now calls Skeleton Berserker as a tank and warrior for close combat. Ryun sits back as the Skeleton Berserker runs wild, terminating monsters. Just then, he realizes that there is another reason he came, and he is already getting distracted. Ryun then activates the Blue Earth breathing technique to unleash a search wave that covers the entire area, but the search returns with nothing. It turns out that Ryun actually came to the Dark Zone to find his brothers because, according to Martong's information, his brothers were last seen in the Dark Zone. Ryun has been using the breathing technique hoping to find a resonance, but he can't sense anything from them. However, he is not disappointed yet because according to Martong's reports, his brothers are on the 9th floor, which is a deeper location. However, he is worried that his current strength doesn't have the capacity to tackle the 10th floor and the deeper ones. Suddenly, he notices that the technique is resonating back to him, and he realizes that someone from the Sermon family is within detection range. Ryun tracks down whoever they are, and he hides behind a tree. He senses 2 people coming toward him, and one of them isn't a knight or even a mage. However, he can sense that the other person has trained movements and is even wearing gear. In addition, this other person has just one hand. He starts wondering if he should reveal himself since the person might be from the Sermon family. He is debating this when Sena appears behind him, teasing him about how much he has changed his appearance. Ryun's heart almost jumps out of his chest when he sees Sena and he screams out in shock and fear. To his surprise, the other 2 who were walking toward him were Truno and Zhang. Truno offers his greetings, saying he definitely would not have recognized Ryun if he didn't use the breathing technique. Zhang mentions that they actually hurried to the scene after they saw the traces he left behind. It was when they were following the traces that they sensed the activation of the Blue Earth breathing technique. Apparently, Truno had told Zhang that if he notices any anomalies in the Dark Zone, it means Ryun has shown up. Hyped up about the whole thing, Zhang tells Ryun that it is an honor to play such a significant role. Suddenly, Ryun senses a scary female presence behind him, leaving him frozen. The woman then speaks out, telling Ryun that she is glad that he is safe. Ryun finally shakes off the shock and replies that it's good to see her, who turns out to be his mother. Apparently, his mother was always busy and this was for the sake of the family, but back then, Ryun didn't know the essence of her efforts. Because he rarely sees her, Ryun holds a silent resentment towards his mother. However, it is different now because he knows that his mother was working so hard to make sure she doesn't lose her last son. Before they start saying anything, Sena creates a barrier. Ryun is surprised to see that Zhang has become one-handed, and Zhang plays it cool, saying it was the result of his own inadequacy when the Phaeton family ambushed Ryun's carriage. He then mentions that he is thankful for the wound because this is why he was tasked with the vital task of protecting Truno, who is currently hiding in the Dark Zone. Truno then reveals that he has been living and hiding in the Dark Zone since the world believes he is dead. Sena was the one who helped him set it up, and she mentions that it is the ideal place to plan their next move while avoiding the eyes of the Phaeton family. While Zhang is all juiced about losing an arm thanks to his inadequacy, Ryun is taking all the blame because he knows everything happened because of him. Ryun's mother then commends him, telling him that he has managed to capture the heart of his loyal subordinates, which is not an easy feat. Ryun's mother, Celine, then changes into a serious expression before asking Ryun if it is true that he defeated the finger of Phaeton and even handed Sun's Phaeton over to Sena. Ryun replies that everything is true because it is all according to his plan. Apparently, using Sun's Phaeton as evidence, the Sermon family was able to secure a massive settlement from the Phaeton family. Celine is ultimately blown by this, forcing her to ask if Ryun is truly her son. Ryun replies that he is the same Ryun, but deep down he knows that he is not the same Ryun that she once knew. However, he is still the son born from her flesh. Celine is happy to hear this, and she tells Ryun that she has one more thing to ask him. Celine then asks Ryun why she senses the aura of death around him. It immediately dawns on him that his mother sensed the necromancer energy within him. Since his mother is a swordmaster and a paladin, he figures out that he can't just give dumb excuses. In addition, everyone included in his plan is indispensable, which is why he has to make them understand the change in him, because this is the only way they are going to move according to his plan without hesitation. Ryun then tells his mother that he is going to tell her everything she wants to know. He reveals that everything began with a dream, which is more or less a revelation. Ryun mentions that this dream was about the downfall of the Sermon family. Ryun narrates that their territory was burning in a war with the Phaeton family, and the Darren Kingdom and the other great families didn't even intervene. During this, Colin and loads of their retainers were slaughtered by Phaeton soldiers. When Truno and Sena hear this, they realize that it truly would have happened if the conflict with Phaeton escalated in reality. Ryun continues by revealing how he was captured by Phaeton alongside his younger sister and his mother. Even though Alejandro and Sena fought bravely to save them, they both met horrible deaths right in front of him. Ryun mentions that after years of torture and suffering, he finally died. After telling them this, Ryun says it was the end of the dream, which is why he believes that he must do what must be done because he knows what he is truly capable of. After Ryun is done narrating, Truno is left traumatized because he figures out that everything he just heard sounded more like the experiences of a veteran who has just returned from the battlefield. Even Sena is convinced that Ryun was recounting actual events that he lived through, rather than mere fantasies. Celine then asks Ryun if it is true that his dream is the catalyst for everything he has been doing. And Ryun says yes. To Truno, he totally believes because he knows what Phaeton is capable of. Sena also believes that Ryun was shown the future, which is the power passed down through the Sermon bloodline. At the same time, Celine figures out that her son has been operating in the shadows to make sure this dream of his doesn't come to reality. Celine can also see that Ryun has obtained the power he needs to make this possible, or else he wouldn't have been able to defeat Ake or even face his family members in the Dark Zone. Kalen then asks Ryun for his future plans, and Ryun is surprised that they believe his story, even though it sounds childish. Celine then replies that he is not a child because the decisions he has made have shown that he has what it takes to shoulder the future of the Sermon family. Celine then tells Ryun that she and everyone in the family will support him. Ryun smiles when he hears this, and he figures out that there is no turning back. Ryun tells his mother that what he is about to ask her is something she can never tolerate, but his mother tells him to go ahead with it. Ryun then mentions that he must relinquish the family's status as a great family. This shocks the trio, and Truno quickly speaks up, telling Ryun that if he does this, the Sermon family would be demoted to a common house and lose its qualifications. Ryun replies that he is aware of this, but he lets them know that with their current strength it is impossible for the Sermons to regain their status. Sena mentions that the status of a great family is the same as absolute authority and power. Because of this, great families can even stand above nations and hold the right to decide the fate of the world when calamities threaten humanity. Celine adds that a great family is the only entity qualified to represent their world in matters that involve dimensions beyond Drea. Because of how important this is, Celine asks Ryun if he is seriously telling her to give up such a title, and Ryun lets her know that it is a must that she does so. Ryun lets them know that the Phaeton family will declare war against them since they know the family's current state. With this, they are going to use it as a medium to claim the title of the greatest family. Ryun reminds them that the family currently doesn't have what it takes to win a war. In addition, kingdoms don't intervene in conflicts between great families. Because of this, Ryun suggests that they discard the name of a great family and hide under the kingdom's banner. He says it is imperative that they receive the protection of the continent's laws and order. Ryun walks up to his mother, telling him that this is not a matter of running away or giving up, but a strategic retreat and a brilliant move to lure their enemies into a trap. Ryun urges his mother to think about it, but lets her know that it must not take long. Ryun then says there is one more thing, and this is to bring his sister Maria back home as soon as possible. This shocks Truno and Sena because the house is already in disarray, but Ryun still wants them to bring Maria back to the house. Ryun then tells his mother that this is the only way, and it is also the only way to draw out what she actually wants from her. After saying this, Ryun tells them that this is all he can say for that moment. Just then, Celine shocks them by revealing that she is going to do everything Ryun just suggested. Ryun is glad to hear this because this is the only way they can avoid unnecessary sacrifices. Celine then whips out her sword, talking about how she is incapable of leading the family. Ryun is confused by this and gets even more confused when his mother points her sword at him. Celine lets Ryun know that she has a responsibility to be his mother before she takes on the role of a holy knight and the matriarch. Celine says everything Ryun has said is the same as saying he is going to take responsibility for the Sermon family. Since she is the current temporary leader, she believes that it is her job to test whether Ryun is qualified to take up the responsibility to lead the family. Celine tells Ryun that he has to withstand her strike, leaving the grown-ups present on the scene shocked and confused. Even Ryun is scared that his mother wants him to withstand a strike from a holy knight who is both a swordmaster and a paladin. Nonetheless, he figures out that he is the only direct descendant fit for the irreplaceable position of the head of the house. Ryun believes that his mother already knows the truth that his father and brothers are as good as dead. This is basically why she wants to hand over the position of the house to him, even if it is unofficial. Celine lets him know that she is going to take the responsibility of convincing the elders of the family to follow whatever he says if he can withstand her strike. Just then, a quest pops up, telling Ryun to gain Celine's recognition. Since Ryun doesn't want his mother to carry the burden that comes with the family's responsibility, he figures out that he has no choice but to succeed. Even though his mother is both a swordmaster and a paladin, he knows that his mother cannot utilize the energies of both simultaneously. He knows that his mother is going to use mana if she plans to test him using the power of a swordmaster. However, she is going to use the holy power if she chooses the power of the paladin. Ryun then concludes that he is just going to readjust his reaction to whatever power she uses. Just then, Celine unleashes her strike, and even though Ryun could see the power in it, his mother was just too fast. Celine is surprised when Ryun doesn't block or even dodge the strike, but allows it to cut through him. However, it doesn't seem Ryun is affected by the strike. Apparently, Ryan was able to phase through the strike because the power his mother used was mana. There is a skill called etherealization, which utilizes the power of a ghost, and it is a fundamental ghost skill that Ryun used for over 100 years in a Daeon. However, Ryun's body isn't perfect for the skill yet, and before he knows it, he gets cut in the chest. Celine rushes over to grab him before he hits the ground, asking him if he is fine. Celine then activates her healing powers, but Ryun assures his mother that he is fine. He also lets her know that he is going to cherish the wound as a mark to ensure that he never forgets her love and concern, a mark of being her son. Ryun hugs his mother, and it turns into an emotional moment between the two. The system also notifies Ryun, telling him that he has earned Celine's recognition, and he has gained a small amount of experience along with Celine's recognition. Because he used the etherealization skill, he is also informed that the rank of the skill has increased. Ryun then tells his mother that there are still things he needs to accomplish on his own, but he has written down his plan to restore the family's status as well as the things he is going to do after this. He then hands over the letter to his mother, and Celine expresses her disappointment that she can't be by Ryun through everything. Sena then tells Ryun that Colin and Alejandro are worried about him. Ryun suggests that it is best they don't tell Alejandro anything yet because he wears his heart on his sleeve. However, as for Colin, he promises to go see her himself. Truno then adds that Alejandro won't even hold a grudge if he later finds out because this is the kind of person Alejandro is. Moments later, they return to the surface, and they go their separate ways. Not long after this, Ryun arrives at the Martong intelligence branch located in the Daron kingdom. He is welcomed by the receptionist who tells him that there is a letter for him from the Fainton branch. Ryun collects the letter, and when he reads it, he realizes that it is concerning the 4th grade promotion exam. The exam basically contains instructions for both the promotion exam and the mission. Apparently, he is required to assassinate the mage, Goma, in Khaled, a territory of the Daron kingdom. Ryun figures out that he has heard the name Goma before, and he realizes that the dude is actually a fitting target for a 4th class exam that tests one's martial prowess. According to the intel that he was given, Goma suddenly arrived in Khaled one day and created a dungeon. Since then, there have been reports of missing villagers. Mercenaries and adventurers were sent to investigate, but they all went missing. Since the lord of the region is useless, the villagers turn to a more specialized organization, Martong. With this, Ryun figures out that he has 2 tasks, which are to clear the dungeon and also to kill Goma. Shortly afterward, he arrives in the quiet village of Khaled. He suddenly runs into an old lady who asks him if he is a traveler and suggests that he leave the village because he is just a boy. Ryun is surprised that he just arrived at the village, but the old lady is already telling him to leave. With a more scary tone, the old lady tells Ryun that there is a fog of death that has settled over the village. She mentions that men, whether adults or children, are vanishing without a trace. Ryun is surprised to hear that only men have been the ones disappearing. The old lady then points to the mountain in the distance, telling Ryun that a sorcerer has settled there and is consuming men to increase mana. The old lady reiterates her warning, telling Ryun to leave the village if he doesn't want to perish. Suddenly, the woman's daughter comes rushing out of the house. Ryun then asks her if there is something wrong with the village, and the girl says no. She claims that her mother's mind is failing because she lost her 2 sons. The girl then points in a direction, telling him that there is an inn that has decent food and a fine lodging for him to stay. While saying this, she is dragging her mother into the house, and Ryun is surprised that the girl's attitude is completely different from her mother's, as if she doesn't want him to leave. Before the girl finally drags the woman into the house, she screams at Ryun again, telling him to leave or else the sorcerer will consume him. Ryun then remembers the warning he got from Sapphire, telling him that there is a rumor about outsiders being lured into the village so that they can be sacrificed to the sorcerer in place of the village's own men. Since he is totally confused about what is happening, Ryun figures out that he will just settle down in the inn first because he has a gut feeling that he should not go hunting the sorcerer immediately. He knows that it is wrong for him to solely depend on the information provided for him by the organization. While entering the inn, there are 2 women on the rooftop behind him, possibly watching his every move. Moments later, the receptionist at the inn tells Ryun about the old lady and how she lost her 2 sons. She also admits that men have been disappearing in the village, and this includes travelers and mercenaries who have visited the village. She tells Ryun to be careful, and Ryun asks her what the lord of the region is doing to stop all that is happening. The receptionist mentions that the lord sent his private soldiers to investigate, but they could not find anything. Nonetheless, the receptionist believes that everything is going to be sorted out very soon because the villagers already gathered money to recruit experts. Ryun asks her what she means by this, and she reveals that the villagers already consulted the assassin guild, Martong. She is confident that the assassin guild will handle the situation. Surprisingly, the receptionist also tells Ryun not to stay long in the village. Moments later, 4 individuals enter the room. Ryun wonders who they are, but he can clearly see that there is a mage among them. The leader of the group then tells the receptionist to serve them food. Apparently, the four are there to meet someone, and they are not even glad that they are meeting the client in such a remote area. Just then, Rian spots the silver badges on their chests, and he relaxes, believing that they are quite capable. Not long after this, one of the ladies watching Rian from the rooftop enters the room and she walks over to Rian. She asks Rian if it is okay for her to sit beside him, but he ignores her. Nonetheless, the girl still sits beside him and even introduces herself as Lavina. Lavina then calls out Rian's name, asking him if he is the one. Rian is shocked to hear this, and it then dawns on him that Sapphire promised to send an assistant to help with the dungeon. Rian cannot believe that they sent him a mere guide instead of an assassin as his assistant. He can't believe that Lavina is so inexperienced that she is even calling out his name in such an open place. Lavina continues yapping, forcing Rian to cover her mouth with his hand, telling her to keep her mouth shut. Lavina whispers to Rian, telling him that she is just excited because it is her first time seeing a guild member, but Rian tells her to keep her mouth shut. Meanwhile, the mercenaries are already growing impatient that their client hasn't shown up, even though they gave up a troll hunt to come to the village. One of them urges his colleagues to be patient because this will be their first dungeon, and it is a chance to make the name of their Steel Shield mercenary group famous. In fact, he believes that they might get a promotion because of this. Ryun, on the other hand, is glad that the mercenaries didn't hear them, but Lavina lets him know that they are rookies because they have no idea just how terrifying the dungeon really is.